Grays, my friend, is no secret that humanity hates itself. It is no wonder that there is always an armed conflict happening. But the true evil is not the weapons or the beasts, it is the mosquitoes, the biggest culprits in exterminating humans. They underwent a mutation and became much, much worse. To prevent the worst from happening, an elite squad made up of extras was formed. It will be up to them to recover the research of a famous professor that could change the world. But this will not be an easy task, as the mosquitoes love to chew on people. Things begin to change when the research is recovered, along with the professor. Humanity now has a chance to prevent the worst from happening. You probably do not know which creature kills the most humans on the face of the earth. Is definitely not the beasts with claws and teeth, with those that are venomous. Humans are also experts at wiping out their own species. Throughout history, this is practically an unquestionable fact. And surprisingly for some, the ones that kill them most are mosquitoes. This should be a topic taken a bit more seriously. It is bizarre if their primary source of food is blood. They could do it another way, but no, they chose to be wretched. One fine day, things became much more serious, and mosquitoes became top predators. There was nothing people could do. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and simply put, mosquitoes became the bougie men on the planet. With the onset of war, half of the world's population was exterminated in less than a day. As a defensive measure, a large army was formed. Since then, it has been 100 years that this endless fight has persisted. Humanity is not willing to give up, and those soldiers seem very motivated. The commander of humanity said they will not throw in the towel, and those who are his subordinates are equally motivated. The details of the next operation will be shared now. The truth is that a researcher had already been announcing this tragedy, but he was completely ignored and called crazy. Until his laboratory was finally found, the objective of this mission is to recover any material that is inside. The task will begin at 10 a.m. This is humanity's last hope, and they need to dedicate themselves. That is the elite squad against the fight of the mosquitoes, made up with the most well-drawn characters. The first of them is a gray-haired old military man, ancient and a veteran. His favorite pastime is killing mosquitoes. The vice leader of the squad has made his life a task of killing mosquitoes. It is his religion. The medical officer is the blonde girl, who is also very useful. There is a bearded engineer who is a nerd but also likes to kill mosquitoes. There is also an officer specialized in hand-to-hand combat, and like his companions, he loves to kill mosquitoes. And lastly, the reconnaissance officer, a girl who enjoys reading, but in her spare time also likes to kill mosquitoes. Now this battalion is ready for war. Under their orders, there are also several extras ready to be executed in the next pages of this manhwa. At a cold region, they made their base of operations, because if you didn't know, mosquitoes hate the cold. Now everyone is heading to war. They finally arrive at the abandoned laboratory. The door opens slowly, and the gray-haired leader watches it closely. On the beaches, the rest of the army is also being disembarked. The truth is that there are hardly any humans left in the world, just over 5,000, and the number of mosquitoes is simply absurd. They exceed 1.5 trillion, and their task is just one: to suck blood. Now that they have disembarked on the beach, they can see a large mountain, but is not made of earth or rocks, is made of mosquitoes, and a large mass of blood-sucking creatures had advanced against humanity's resistance. The soldiers form a barrier with their rifles ready to hold back that aggression. Elsewhere, a squad is gathering data. The gray-haired leader asked for the sensors to be set up at the laboratory door. Advancing through the corridors, they have not discovered anything yet, until they found a doorknob that activated the power generator of the place. At the end of the corridor, there was a door. It seems to hide something inside. The reconnaissance officer looks at it very attentively. Meanwhile, outside, a great carnage is happening. Unexpectedly, the mosquitoes stop advancing against the extras. It seems they are regrouping elsewhere. This left the commander very anxious, as the elite squad has certainly been detected. Inside the laboratory, they entered a large room covered in white, which seems very suspicious. Only then did one of the officers realize that they had been discovered. Desperate, the gray-haired man orders everyone to start running. But before he continued advancing, he ordered the close combat officer to create a defensive barrier. This generated some distrust within the group, and the medical officers seemed displeased. However, the orders from the gray-haired man were unquestionable. Before embarking on his practically insurmountable task, the hand-to-hand combat guy stopped next to the medic. She placed something on his arm to be used only in extreme necessity. As everyone moved away, we noticed that the guy who likes knives seems to be a sadist, and he's going to have a lot of fun. In another compartment, the leader informed his squad that they would split up to explore. So far, the fight seems to have been in vain. No type of weapon worked against the mosquitoes, and they continue to multiply. The reason they are victorious is simple. They are far too numerous and very violent. To have any chance of resistance, humanity developed new defense tactics. And the result seems to have worked, as the guy who likes knives found the fight very boring. He wields a sword made of graphene, much more powerful than metal, along with adrenaline patches that get high. His armor is also capable of enhancing muscle potential, and the cherry on top is the easing naturally violent person. He has a very rare mental peculiarity that makes him a harbinger of gratuitous aggression, a very specific syndrome called Isher. Among all the mosquitoes, it seems there is one greater than them. Wow, this mosquito makes love with juice. He certainly isn't afraid of mules. The creatures called for combat the Mosquito 2.0 is specialty, crushing bones with punches. The officer realized that this way he would have a bit of fun, since his opponent is very formidable. The two stare at each other furiously, and immediately began exchanging blows. but the violence officer managed to cut the creature's hands. He was also struck by a powerful kick, being thrown several meters away. Surprisingly, he managed to cut the mosquito's attack, slicing his arm as if it were cellophane sheets. Even so, the creature seems relentless. The fatal wounds, it continues to assault our boy, until it finally had part of its head sliced off. After that, the surviving mosquitoes decided it would be a good idea to flee, but the violence officer still has a lot of work to do. He informed his companions that he ended up letting some escape, so they will have to deal with that. After that battle, he removed the patch that was on his forehead. He needed to put on another one as the fun is still going to continue. His expectation is that this operation will be the last for the elite squad. Inside the laboratory, the rest of the team is still searching for information. The bearded boy seems to have come across a very interesting large hall full of test subjects. Only then did he realize that they were mosquitoes. Before passing his information along, he saw that he was surprised by his enemies. But luckily for him, he was carrying a tiny robot, armed to the teeth. This little robot is capable of keeping the enemies at bay, firing heavy rounds at them, giving time for his loyal human companion to escape with his tail between his legs. However, the mosquitoes are very motivated. They need to take a sip. During the chase, they ended up finding themselves in a short corridor with large machine guns on the other side. At that moment, the mosquitoes realized that life is not easy. They were simply shredded by the high-caliber bullets of the elite squad. Talking, they realized that the violence officer must have encountered fighter-type mosquitoes, and the bearded boy said that room seemed to be an incubator. This information left his companion quite apprehensive. Somehow, it seems that Crazy Scientist is behind everything that has happened to humanity. Let it casually chat as if it were a comedy and romance series. The violence officer is already very worn out, because he had to defeat several very strong enemies. Before him, other mosquitoes are waiting to finish him off. No one knows why, but things suddenly became very quiet. The gray-haired commander Aspa was wrong, and the reconnaissance officer said it was danger. They need to run immediately, otherwise there will be no more chapters in the story. Amidst those many mosquitoes, it seems that one much larger than them had emerged. The violence officer looked at that foolish creature and asked himself what it could be. The creature's expression was sad, but one thing he was sure of: if they fought, it would be the last time. However, even though it was weakened, the creature decided not to attack him. It began to think that it was waiting for him to recover. Taking another sticker from his arm, he decided he would use his last resort. He placed the black sticker on his forehead. He was sealing his fate. Even though he was completely exhausted, his body was transported by a great power, and the price of it all is his life. Now the officer of violence was ready again, but that power was not enough as his head turned into a tennis ball. Our boy of violence's body tried to attack the creature, but he forgot to bring his head along as it remained on the ground. After that, the poor little mosquito began to cry as he didn't want to do something like that. However, it is part of his nature to be a mosquito that likes to take a low sip. The squad rushed desperately through the corridors, trusting the intuition of the intelligence officer. In the middle of the way, their doctor noticed something. Then she communicated to everyone that the boy of violence was no longer among them. In another corridor of that same place, the bearded boy and the vice captain were fighting against creatures. They ended up running out of bullets. Faced with that, the bearded boy gave an order to the little robot. He had to join the others. Now they would have to do the same thing as the boy of violence. Charge into battle using only swords. The battle would certainly be very fierce. And while defeating those creatures, the vice captain remembered a kitten. He's annihilating them so that his kitten can have a beautiful future. Finally, he encountered a different mosquito, one that seems to have listened to a lot of simple plan during his adolescence and now realized he cannot be perfect sorry. Realizing that there might not be a next day, he believed he lived honorably by killing mosquitoes. His gaze remains very determined and the fight will be fierce. But the illustrator got lazy. All that remained was his head in the lap of the bearded boy who was missing part of his shoulder. Outside the laboratory on the beach, the rest of the extras are trying to contain the surviving mosquitoes. They are also out of ammunition. Now the mosquitoes can advance freely. As soon as the commander learned of this, he gave an order to his soldiers. They need to grab the knives. And highly motivated, the soldiers are ready to fight for their brothers and sisters. But it is virtually impossible for them to defeat all these enemies at once. Even so, they make a brave barrier, willing to fight for their lives. All the humans on that beach advance into battle. Now the team's doctor shares with everyone that the vice captain and the bearded boy are also gone, thank God. I didn't even bother to remember the names of those characters. Finally, the gray-haired captain told the reconnaissance officer that it is up to her now to say where they should go. She is aware of this great responsibility. Then he asked the doctor for the stickers that prepare him for battle. When she learned this, the reconnaissance officer became very worried. The doctor said she would accompany him as if he used more than one sticker at a time, he would certainly perish very quickly. It was then that the reconnaissance officer realized she would be alone, something that has happened in her life as she was an orphan. Bravely bidding farewell to her companions, she has a mission to fulfill, heading towards the objective while her companions fall behind. All she wishes is for them to stay alive. She needs to reach the end of the laboratory. Now that mosquito, there seems to be a big fan of Adam's song by Blink 182, had found the humans. And just like the boy of violence, they use the black sticker and are extremely powerful. Observing the different mosquito, they realized, in fact, there was a change there. That poor mosquito must have listened to Wake Me Up when September ends on loop his entire life, and now they will act as planned using all the violence they possess. making the oath of the surviving humans for their brothers and sisters and for themselves. And as expected, there was no way those soldiers could defeat the large mass of mosquitoes. They are being massacred. On the inside, a different mosquito, who seems to have listened to Wood by Alice in Chains on loop, is closely watching his new enemies. The captain and the doctor are willing to make a human barricade. They seem to know that this enemy is very formidable. Everything will happen now according to the plan. They are prepared to give their lives for this cause. Thanks to the increase in power, they managed to annihilate several of the extra mosquitoes, but the sad boy managed to dodge, also showing that he possesses enviable agility. But facing two strengthened humans, he ended up suffering some significant wounds. He needs to use all of his dodging skills, exploring to the fullest the illustration capabilities of this manhwa. The fight continues fiercely, and the creature is being subdued. But she also showed that she had read a lot of Maruto's works. It was all just a shadow clone. He disappeared before her eyes. After being slightly injured and beaten a lot, the creature decided to tell the human that they were strong. This immediately left the captain and the doctor surprised as the creature spoke, and something even darker happened. The mosquito devoured one of its companions, causing his body to regenerate and undergo a great transformation. Noticing this, the commander warned his companion to be ready. The mosquito now had extremely well-defined features, claiming to be the great mother of all, and for the union of life they needed to eradicate the humans. In the next scene, the doctor was invited to lose her head while the captain watched without doing anything. They had been too quick, and he was without his companion. He tried to retaliate with his indestructible graphene sword only to discover that it had been destroyed. Completely unarmed, he tried to react but was punched in the ribs by the mother mosquito. The captain fell to the ground, trying to spit out his own entrails while being watched by the creature. In a final act of bravery, the captain tried to cut it with a broken sword but couldn't. He was beaten once again while the mother of mosquitoes watched him. Looking at the ground, the creature became very thoughtful. It was as if an allegory was happening of when humans killed mosquitoes. But his body falling apart, the captain was completely desolate. He tried to attack once more but received only small slaps. This happened several times. He couldn't do anything against that enemy. Even so, he drew strength from nowhere to get back on his feet. His body was already completely exhausted. In a final act of desperation, the captain told the mosquito not to underestimate humans. However, having used those forbidden drugs, his body was fallen apart as if made of dust. He gradually remembered his companions who were also already in the other world, and that orphan he had to send to the final room. Before trying to stab his sword into the creature once more, his body turned to dust, and the king mosquito realized that humans were extremely lamentable, pathetic creatures. All that remained of that battle was a graphene sword lying on the ground. Inside a room, a young man is having his sleep interrupted by the characteristic noise of a blood-sucking mosquito. Filled with grand furies, he managed to annihilate the small creature. But after doing so, the door to his room was broken down by a mysterious creature. A mutant mosquito appeared there, and was ready to begin its revenge. Several years ago, the intelligence officer was just an abandoned child. She was found by the elite squad of a human resistance. They thought she wouldn't be able to speak, but the girl could do so. The problem was that she was too traumatized. Looking closely at the child, the gray-haired captain seemed to understand her situation, and after touching her on the head, the girl became emotional. After that moment, she was accepted by everyone, who were already quite enthusiastic about having a child on the team. She would be a great live bait. Now that her family no longer exists, she needs to complete the mission in their memory. On her way to her objective, she left some explosives on the wall. The officer knows that her journey will be very lonely, and by using the explosives, she managed to block the path for a while. But the mosquitoes were quite engaged and began to divide the prize. They reached the other side and noticed that there was an explosive hamming, and another explosion occurred, causing more debris and annihilating some of the monsters. However, their volume is truly impressive. The creatures began to smile like moral degenerates, and among them is the king mosquito. Using the strength of his fists, he managed to completely clear the path leading to our supposed protagonist. The girl runs down the corridor, and looking back, she realized that the monsters were approaching the company by a strange one. She finally reached a fork. It was necessary to make the right choice, otherwise there will be no next chapter. She decided to follow her intuition and go to the right. As she moved toward her goal, she didn't realize that the place was completely compromised. The mosquitoes were already on her tail. She needed to use the rifle to defend herself. A great explosion occurred. The girl fled, but life is not easy. If life were easy, children would be born crying, and the corridor is full of mosquitoes. She passed by all of them, showing that she was practically an illegitimist. Using her rifle in a formidable combination with the sword, outside, the remaining commander continues to fight as well. It finally seems that the girl has reached the last room, and it's good that she does this quickly, as the last soldiers are being annihilated. Knowing that every minute is crucial, the commander orders his men to continue killing those monsters, and the girl wastes her time in the white room being filmed by a camera. Apparently, she's been identified as human, which has led to some peculiar events. The door opened before her, catching the girl's attention. She had finally arrived at the core of that mysterious laboratory. But unfortunately for her, the king mosquito, who is very strange, also arrived there with her. Life for that squad seemed very peaceful, as if it were a perfectly normal family. There were moments of fun, and they celebrated birthdays completely normal. Now, everything is just memories. The family she made fighting against the mosquitoes has been left behind. Our protagonist stands before that mysterious door, about to end everything. She felt the malevolent presence of the king mosquito behind her. Her first reflex was to aim her rifle and shoot the creature. The bullet flies faster than sound, but before it could hit the monster's eye, it was deflected by her own hands. The mosquito is impressed that she managed to react so quickly and aim at the only part of its body not protected by its exoskeleton. She definitely seems to be a very interesting worm. Our girl is completely terrified. She tried to draw her sword but was stopped. As he lifts her with one of his arms, the girl fired her pistol at his eyes, only to discover that they are also extremely resilient. Like a pillow made of cotton, she is thrown away. The girl crashes against the metal wall as the mosquito comes to finish her off. Showing that he is a great sadist, he made just one hole in her shin, piercing a tibia as if it were butter. The girl is very injured, but she still has a goal to fulfill. She noticed that she just needs to pull a single lever, but the king mosquito will take full advantage of this moment and has already realized that she wants to open the door. And indeed, there's something inside that is extremely dangerous for the survival of the mosquitoes, and his instincts are telling him that this cannot happen at any cost. Countering the monster, the girl says that her instincts are telling her that he is actually just being selfish and wants to protect himself. Taking a deep breath, the monster realized that humans truly are incapable of understanding. It seems they are being seen as the villains of this story, but they are merely guardians of life. If she is also a form of life like him, she should understand these intense commands that are engraved in her genetic code to survive and multiply. Thanks to this, creatures enter this eternal cycle of killing each other. Then he begins an extremely generic villain speech while the girl has to endure all these words, until he reaches the brilliant conclusion that they are different from humans because they know how to stop the cycle of destruction. They possess genes from various species and have a single objective. What they are doing is the most rational choice for life to perpetuate on Earth. Our protagonist realized that he is actually making just an eugenic choice to eliminate the impure, according to his own rationality. And the creature doesn't think twice to confirm this information. Indeed, the girl is smart and understood very quickly. Now she realizes that she is facing a great authoritarian deciding to hand over the survival of her own species to him and would not resist. Hearing his words, the mosquito thanked her and now will end her life without any pain. However, he appreciated the conversation they had as it was the only one he had in his entire life. Before something worse could happen, the mysterious little robot, owner of great courage and extremely useful for the story, appeared out of absolute nowhere, giving the girl who had her tibia pierced the opportunity to run to the lever. The mosquito was too entertained with the robot, which showed him all its cheap LED lights from a trinket on AliExpress, while our protagonist is running towards that thing that can open the door with her shattered tibia. Before she could finally reach her goal, the king mosquito managed to grab her by the leg, throwing the girl's body against the wall once again in a devastating manner. Only then does she realize that the most beautiful, interesting, and charismatic character in this work no longer exists. The poor robot has unfortunately gone to his own isekai. Now the king mosquito sighs deeply as he wanted to give her a completely painless end, and that is very regrettable. But our protagonist shows that she is very brave and says that she will not be the one to limit, showing her hand a small keychain that is now broken. The girl remembered that she received that small accessory from the gray-haired captain and the team doctor. She used that small accessory to pull the lever. A chain reaction was underway throughout the laboratory, and from within, a completely white body was released. It fell to the ground, and now the king mosquito realized that its problems had multiplied. Outside, the survivors continued to fight, and the bodies of our protagonist's companions remained motionless. She didn't know what was inside, but surely this colorless body must be humanity's hope. The Griffing sword lay on the ground and the creature's fingers began to move. The mosquito channeled all its fury into the attack, but it was completely subdued by this porcelain doll that had just risen, and it screamed in a fit of rage for being sentient. It realized that the misery of its existence had only just begun. And in a completely unexpected manner, the porcelain doll began to shout that people can't leave it alone for a minute because it is very beautiful, and everyone loves it. No matter where it goes, the ground is always red as if it were a gala event. Everyone treats it politely, but it can't feel anything at all. All it wants is to love someone and truly fall in love. It desires to feel in a way it has never felt before and will wait as long as necessary. For all it wishes is to fall in love at least once. And while it vents about this, several mosquitoes are approaching that place. Realizing that its rant would be interrupted, the creature punched at them. Its power is so great that it can be compared to a cheap version of Saitama. Our poor protagonist watches that creature, quite surprised. One thing she is sure of, that porcelain doll must be a disgusting person. Moreover, it is completely devoid of clothing, and there is something hanging between its legs that offends her greatly. And now the porcelain doll screams to the sky, telling Dr. Kim that this is what will happen. Outside, the rest of the mosquitoes are merging into a single form, creating a huge doll. This is the final Megazord, and they are ready to eradicate life on Earth. But the naked porcelain doll is concentrating all its strength. It screams completely nonsensical things while becoming increasingly furious. Now our protagonist realizes that Dr. Kim was indeed a very crazy scientist for conducting research this way. The mosquito Megazord is prepared to annihilate the porcelain giant, but all it did was send a beam of energy against them, very similar to classic Dragon Ball. And while it destroys its massive enemy, our protagonist is sure that whoever created them is certainly very crazy. Simply put, humanity's hope had emerged. and it continues to strike extremely peculiar poses, showing that there is something hanging between its legs. Our poor protagonist can't believe that this is really humanity's only way out. It would have been better to let the mosquitoes win. After regaining its composure, the porcelain doll asked if there are still survivors. It wants to know if humans have truly been extinguished. The girl closed her eyes with great sorrow as she remembered all her companions. She told the porcelain doll that at this very moment the surviving humans are fighting as if they were bait, so they need its help. Behaving like a true hero, it shouted enthusiastically and handed her the poor robot that had been obliterated. Holding the girl in its arms, it said that they are now going to save those who serve as bait. The girl realizes that she can't deny that request, but she was surprised by the sudden speed of the muscular porcelain body. In the next second, they had risen to a great height, and the girl began to wonder if they were flying but felt a completely miserable chill in her stomach. It was nothing but great jumps that the porcelain giant was making. She doesn't understand why it can't fly if it can emit energy beams from its mouth, and the porcelain giant warned her that it wasn't an energy beam. It was just an extremely powerful spit. This left our girl completely disheartened by the simplicity of the power of humanity's hope. On the beach, the number of extras had significantly decreased. Realizing it would be their end, the commander said it was an honor to fight side by side with his men until the last moment. Everyone was surprised by the arrival of humanity's hope. The mosquitoes, the soldiers, the commander, all were left speechless, until the girl said they had come to save them. Delivering a girl's body to the commander, the porcelain doll asked if everyone was okay. Completely endowed and shocked by the appearance of that being, the commander asked the girl who he was and received the answer, but this is the consciousness of Dr. Kim. Surprised by this information, the commander had to accept that perhaps he could save humanity. Giving a generic heroic speech, the porcelain doll said he could not forgive the violent and unjust existence of mosquitoes. He began to move his hands in a way that caught the attention of our protagonist. Then the porcelain doll said that those who are born as men wish at least once in their lives to fulfill the dream of becoming the most powerful existence on Earth. Thus, he started to contract his muscles with all his strength, for he had become that person. As his muscles gained exceptional definition, the girl realized that he was a complete lunatic. This is such a blatant plagiarism that our protagonist is very worried, as this manhwa could be cancelled at any moment. To everyone's surprise, he did not have the devil's back from an extremely famous fighting manga. What appeared on his back was a very funny smile, which left the girl quite relieved. Now that she is safe, the commander noticed that her wounds seemed to be very serious. Behind him, the fighting began. Indeed, the porcelain doll managed to defeat all his enemies with just a few moves. That is the counteroffensive of humanity, whether they want to believe it or not. Elsewhere, macabre and mysterious beings are conversing. It seems that the Prince of Mosquitoes has been defeated, and sitting on his throne of destruction, the grand and macabre figure warned his subjects that the plan would be put into action. After all that action, Commander Chocolate introduced himself to the hope of humanity. It's extremely grateful for everything that happened on the battlefield. Now they need to do the most important thing, provide something for him to wear. However, as soon as he heard this, the porcelain doll became completely outraged, calling the commander a fool, declaring for all to hear that clothes are the tools of the weak. Completely motivated by his unrealistic speech, the commander did as the salvation of humanity and got rid of all his clothes, which ended up making the porcelain giant quite happy. Finally, with the war about to be concluded, humans have time to mourn those who fell in battle. Our dear protagonist is also in the midst of the celebration. Later that same day, she watches the sunset while remembering her family. The girl cries deeply as she misses those who were important to her once, and in her hands is the only portrait that remains of that large and unusual family. While she's living her sadness, the porcelain giant approached her. He also seems to be experiencing some kind of struggle and began to cry like a small child. Our girl is completely saddened, and seeing him cry made her want to cry even more. The two formed a great chorus crying all around. Gathered with the most important men, the commander said that only 4,000 humans were left. Humanity is on the brink of extinction. Now they need the power of the porcelain giant. The creature, with its white skin, already knows what must be done. His power is extremely necessary for humans to endure throughout history. The commander's greatest doubt is how they can access this great power that the porcelain giant possesses. And indeed, he would like to share this information. But in the fight against the mosquitoes, he ended up destroying his laboratory, so that will not be possible. He shares a few more things, but mysteriously, this information is hidden by the script, as his dialogue balloon is behind the head of a cat. After hearing that, not only the commander but the important people in that room began to debate very energetically. The truth is that no matter how strong the porcelain giant is, none of them believe they can defeat 1.5 truly mosquitoes. However, surprising everyone, the porcelain giant raised his hand and shouted enthusiastically for none of them to worry. They should be happy with hope. It may not be able to have a body as powerful as his, but there is a way to enhance human strength. The commander immediately asked what it would be, and contracting his biceps intensely, the porcelain giant said that only love and passion can do that. After hearing his great nonsense, the commander seems to have been convinced 4 pages ago. He took off his own clothes because he believed the porcelain giant's speech. Outside, our protagonist decided it was time for a change in appearance, and now she sports much shorter and quite androgynous hair. Knowing that there is still a great battle to be won, she began practicing target shooting, defeating several mosquitoes. Even though they are numerous, she is a very fierce fighter, and those who are unfortunate enough to approach her become intimately acquainted with her blade. The girl performs a series of elaborate movements while exterminating her enemies, shooting and slicing at the same time, showing that she is an extremely well-coordinated person. No mosquito can defeat her in this situation. But it was all just a training room. This is merely a simulation. It's time to move on to level 7, and it will be much more difficult. For before our girl stands a mosquito that seems to have a very high-protein diet and is not afraid of needles. The fighter-type mosquito is very complicated. Since the beginning of the war, they have become one of humanity's greatest barriers. Their tone and muscular bodies have great defense. They are also very resilient to any type of damage. And as if that weren't enough, they possess exceptional speed. The creature managed to surprise our protagonist, showing her that it also has an exaggerated power. Human technology for strength enhancement cannot compare to this. Even so, our girl managed to dodge that second attack while wielding her sword, making a strike that superficially cut the arm of that test dummy. The mosquito is also showing that it is quite skilled in the art of feinting, holding an object that was thrown in its direction. That appears to be a flashbang, and it was used to distract the creature, giving our girl the opportunity to cut it down in a devastating manner. However, the blow was not fatal. The pumped-up mosquito continues to strike her. Until this time, its attacks completely caught her off guard and her ribs were crushed. In light of that significant damage, the test was concluded. She cannot pass level 7 at her current level, and all she managed was to survive for just over 7 seconds. Lying on the ground, the girl realized that she is not on the level of Captain Violence. She needs to train much more. Her session was also interrupted by the arrival of the commanding captain. He came to congratulate her on the great feat of enduring 7 seconds of that creature. However, there was something he would like our girl to try. Inside that container is Dr. Kim's new formula to enhance combat power. Looking deeply at that cup, the girl felt a chill run down her spine. It definitely shouldn't be anything that would put her life at risk, but the energy coming from it is extremely dark. The commander understood that if she didn't want to be a test subject, he would look for someone else, but the girl didn't want to miss the opportunity, and she drank all the contents of that bottle. Finally, she realized that there was no taste at all in that new formula, and the commander said that all impurities had been completely removed. Only then did she realize that she must have ingested something truly disgusting, and gazing deeply at that bottle, her mind was overtaken by intense and profound depression. Finally, she was released to return to her training, as it would be an excellent opportunity to test the effectiveness of that elixir. To her double surprise, the person in charge of this examination increased the difficulty level of the training to level 9. Our girl, who could barely survive the level 7, was shocked by this information, and before her appeared several completely muscular and ripped mosquitoes ready to kill her. Our protagonist was left with a paralyzed gaze. For one thing she is sure of, at her current strength, she would not be able to defeat any of those enemies. This is level 9, truly something astonishing. Not even Captain Violence would be able to defeat something like this. Now she's being attacked, her movements need to be quick. And surprisingly, with a single swing of her sword, she annihilated several of those mosquitoes. The girl can hardly believe it, much less the commander. Indeed, the porcelain doll knows what it is doing. Our protagonist was completely paralyzed by her new power. As she casually cuts down her enemies, she's observing her hand. She has no idea how all of this is happening. And the evaluators notice that the results are incredible. With a new power, the war will truly come to an end. Humanity now has a chance of victory. Only one last enemy remains for our protagonist. All she needs to do is cut it down as she did with all the others. However, she decided to try something she saw the porcelain doll do. She spat in the direction of the creature, but her spit was weak as there is a lack of hatred in her heart. The examiners observed that behavior without understanding, which ended up leaving the girl very embarrassed. The evaluator also saw that the girl's face is completely red. It could be some kind of side effect from the drug that was administered to her. Little do they know that the poor girl is dying of embarrassment. After the test was completed, they asked if she had felt any discomfort as her face turned extremely red. Ensuring that it was nothing serious, our protagonist revealed her curiosity. She wants to know what she had ingested. The commander stated that it is love and passion. That is the best description he could give her right now. And indeed, as he moves his muscles overwhelmingly, that is what the porcelain doll says, love and passion. He will give all his love to the humans. Only then do we discover that they are actually collecting the sweat from the porcelain doll, as this seems to be the source of all our girl's power. Poor thing, what a shame for the poor girl. May God have mercy on her soul. So far, the big porcelain doll is refusing to wear any kind of clothing, leaving its jewelry completely hanging. On the aircraft above her head, our dear protagonist prepares to jump as well. The porcelain doll made it very clear that parachutes are instruments made for cowards. Right after saying that, he hit the ground the old force of inertia. Emerging from the hold and he faced a vast multitude of enemy insects. Now he's slightly regretting having fallen that way, as, although he survived, the fall was very painful. The mosquitoes watch closely how the porcelain doll is a big fool, a sentiment that is also shared by our protagonist and her faithful sidekick, the cute robot. Now the two are united on the battlefield. While the Jana cries desperately, our girl says he should use the parachute next time. Earlier that same day, the commander told his soldiers that this is the counterattack. They will begin the offensive against the mosquitoes. Her only objective is to eradicate everything in their path. The effect of that miraculous potion based on love and passion will last for 1 hour. Knowing this, our protagonist and her companions are prepared. Before she leaves, the commander spoke to her privately as our protagonist needs to pay attention to the porcelain giant. Since he is currently humanity's only hope, there is a risk that he might direct his actions and power in the wrong direction. So a female presence is necessary to guide him on the path of justice, truth, and humility. He believed our dear friend is the perfect person for this role, and she decided to agree. Only then did she share what she thinks about all this with the commander, the true source of the porcelain doll's powers, but the script did not allow us to read those words. And indeed, the commander agrees with her intuition. This hunch seems to be very incredible. Now she and the last hope of humanity are together, ready to fight. Amidst all those insects, there was one very different, this smile very similar to Batman's villain. Apparently, you should recognize the porcelain doll as the one responsible for defeating the newest. Surprised by the talking mosquito, our protagonist does not know who the newest is. Then the mutant insects said they are of royalty, the closest to all existence capable of encompassing all life. That is what they are. And now they will perform his transformation in the name of the Great Mother to unite all life, revealing that he also has extremely well-crafted features. After that grand explanation, the porcelain giant needed to sneeze, which ended up annihilating a good portion of his enemies, including the Lavmouth. It is truly bizarre that he caused so much destruction completely unplanned. Our girl lamented that she had much to add to the cursed existence, and the porcelain giant apologized. Now all that remains for them is to finish off the remaining mosquitoes. Thanks to the strengthening provided by the porcelain doll's sweat, humanity achieved a grand offensive, and the commander is quite enthusiastic about the achievements of his military forces. He is now celebrating a grand toast to honor the memory of the compatriots who fell in the trenches of war. They are all excited about the hopeful future that can now be conceived. That same day, the commander began to cry as alcohol took control of his emotional table. He does not believe he is prepared to be a leader, and that other commander who wears an eye patch said that soon he will meet a good woman and start a family. All this while our protagonist attentively observes the joy of everyone, but something caught her attention. The porcelain giant who refuses to put any clothes on his body seems to be leaving the place. He went outside to contemplate the beauty of the stars. In his solitude, our girl asked if he wasn't feeling cold since he never wears clothes, and she noticed that the man seemed to be feeling some kind of intense sadness. Moreover, he is not an ordinary human. Half of him seems to be a mosquito as well. She also noticed that the porcelain giant's arm was trembling, and he responded that he was indeed feeling that way because he was too close to a very beautiful woman. Our girl said she would feel quite embarrassed by that compliment, and the giant said he went outside because he needed to empty his intestines, jumping into the air and disappearing completely from sight. In the middle of the forest, our boy is straining hard. He grabs the trees, destroying everything with his hands. It seems that a transformation is underway, and he has to fight against the urge to destroy humans. Our girl managed to find him because she is very good at this kind of task, so the porcelain giant said she is a great depraved one for following someone who was going to the bathroom. Only then did our protagonist make it clear that the only depraved one there is him, who refuses to wear clothes. As the pseudo-transformation was in progress, his mouth filled with sharp teeth and worried, the porcelain giant ordered her to leave. Our protagonist said that her desire is to do just that, but she ended up feeling extremely frightened and her body became paralyzed. Even so, she couldn't let that creature be alone because she was there to provide emotional support. Seeing that he was within reach of the claws, the porcelain giant asked if he really was going to make her his smack. The creature is struggling against its own impulses until our girl decided to touch him. She gently caressed his face, saying that everything was okay. At that moment, she passed on the affection she received in life, remembering a time when she was just an orphan and was taken in by that whole team of extras. That brief contact made the porcelain giant return to normal. Now he has taken control of the half of his body at his mosquito and wants to destroy humans. Observing that girl, our great giant seemed to have revisited some memories. Very grateful for the favor he had received, he asked her if there was something she desired very much. For a brief moment, the girl was confused, and the giant reinforced his request because he wanted to know what she desired. Quite intrigued by this, Kisses, yes, her name is Kisses, asked if her wish would come true, and the giant affirmed that he would do his best. In light of this, she sighed deeply and told him that she wanted a picnic. That is her greatest wish, to go out for a picnic and see flowers in the field. He certainly must not know any of this, as his life also happened before that great disaster, but none of the people alive in this current world have managed to have a picnic. That is why this is her greatest wish, and it seems that the great marble giant completely understood. Now they can finally return to the shelter of humanity. Only then did our dear protagonist realize that the alcohol was wreaking havoc on her internal balance system and asked to be carried back. Since she made all that effort to find him, she told a simple lie, saying she hurt her leg. As they returned to the base through the giant's jumps, the girl asked several questions because it is inconceivable to her that Earth once had 9 billion people. What is even more bizarre is to think that these people, when alive, fueled enormous conflicts and nations lived in war. Definitely, none of this makes sense when extinction is a real risk. Kisses asked if the marble block participated in those conflicts in his past life, and he said never directly. The truth is that humans always have their own challenges to overcome, and the pursuit of happiness is one of them. Kisses agrees with that statement. Only then does the great giant say that he hates humans. Now quite drunk and thoughtful, Kisses concluded that people should have the right to pursue their own happiness, and apparently the great albino giant left his whole life behind just to save people. She immediately remembered the moment they cried together outside. Certainly, that was not a difficult choice for him. Far away, several mosquitoes are rummaging through the ground looking for something, until one of those clowns found a small piece of amber. There was something inside it, and apparently he hadn't watched the movie Jurassic Park. He took that small piece of amber to a powerful mosquito, but decided to consume it. He was chewing on that, searching for something. However, he still hadn't found what he desired. That wasn't enough. In light of this, he ordered his children to continue collecting those stones. For one day, the world will have true peace. The next day, our girl woke up very early and went to a certain person's room, wondering if he had woken up. Since she hates having to wait, she decided she would wake him up anyway and force her way into the room. She was met with a very unusual scene. But one who refuses to wear clothes uses a hood to sleep. She carefully observed the large, unconscious block of marble, until he woke up startled, saying that she was a great depraved for having done that. Only then did Kisses tell him that the commander ordered her to show him all the facilities of the headquarters. Thus, that same morning, they began to walk around the place, and Kisses heard some rumors. It was indeed very awkward to walk beside someone who was completely unclothed, and she asked the great porcelain giant to get dressed, but he didn't want to. For part of his self-esteem lies in the fact that he can walk this way without any inconvenience. Moreover, he truly believes that this is a demonstration of courage and masculinity. Kisses notices that people are quite uncomfortable. They walked faster and faster as Kisses didn't want to prolong this situation. In hopes of making the giant walk faster, she ended up touching his hand, which made her quite excited. Passing in front of a restaurant, she decided it was time to have a meal. She handed over her identification card, requesting a table for two. A large and beautiful meal was placed before them, and a chef assured that he prepared it with special care as they are people fighting for everyone's survival. The eyes of Kisses and a large block of marble were shining, for they were determined to make the best of that food. Our precious protagonist was savoring the meat of the crustacean, while the porcelain giant was eating everything in sight. The perfect texture of that meat led them to a brief contemplation of what gastronomic paradise is. The flavor was so intense that Kisses imagined herself swimming a pool of love. That perfect seasoning made her see elegance in wife. It was as if a very lively woman was whipping an old man playing the violin. Finally, she understood what the culture of ancient humanity is. While they were eating, our marble boy was surprised by Kisses' reaction. Even so, they continued voraciously, like two animals, until only one last piece remained. Kisses carefully observed the savior of humanity. She shared with him that she lived her life in the slums, lived alone, and had to feed on insects, and that he certainly doesn't know what it's like to swallow a live cockroach, let alone put it in his mouth. For some, that was food, but for others, it was simply the worst period of their lives, memories she cannot forget. And certainly deep in the heart of the porcelain doll, he knows that this kind of suffering is unparalleled, and he should give up that last crab leg. But the hope of humanity will not back down in the face of that phony speech, saying that respect for the elderly is something common in society and in all cultures. And as an older person, he has responsibilities to the younger ones, tasks to fulfill, just like nourishing the hope of those who have not yet lived fully. Then he asked if he, as an ancestor of humanity, is really not capable of getting that last piece. The two continue to argue in a completely childish manner, until the head chef decided to give them another large crab. It seemed that was enough, and outside they thanked for the beautiful meal they had. Now that he was satisfied, the great block of albino muscle said that cuisine really doesn't change much. Food remains food. Kisses commented that it was indeed very lazy of the illustrator of this work to recycle so many panels to create such a long dialogue. Now they are passing through a residential area. There was once a concern that it wouldn't be enough for the survivors. In another place, completely identical to the residential area they presented, the factory that produces food, which is very important for everyone's survival. Again, in a place completely like the first, they presented the school where children are taught. Everything in that place is made the same way. They are gray blocks and completely geometric. The great albino giant is becoming increasingly interested in this strange type of architecture. Since she was on break, Kisses asked if he would like to exercise a bit, to which the savior of humanity agreed. Indeed, there are days in life that are quite uneventful. As they have not much to do that day and the chapter is coming to an end, they decided that something comedic needs to happen. It indeed happened, but it is completely censored. Just as closely observes the mess left by the ping pong ball. Definitely, that was not a good game idea with the savior of humanity. They also tried a bit of soccer, but the ball could not withstand the force of those hits. They also attempted a bit of basketball, but the ball seems to refuse the touch of our boy. They were going to do weightlifting, that everything for the marble block was completely light, until they decided to do something unusual, using costumes inside a ring. They are ready for combat, but just by looking at that extreme invascularized forearm and with a completely surprising muscle volume, Kisses realized something. That would not be a good idea, so they decided to take dance lessons until our boy completely lost control. Becoming completely strong has its disadvantages. No type of exercise is fun enough for him. Kisses asked if they could go swimming, and our hero said he couldn't do that, so she decided she would teach. Finally, the two went to one of the few pools that remain in this world devastated by mosquitoes. Surprisingly, the marble block decided that it could wear swim trunks. Kisses was completely shocked to see him dressed for the first time in his life. Her curiosity is so great that she went to ask what had caused that, and the marble block revealed that it is very embarrassing to be the only naked person near a pool. In light of that question, he decided to ask if Kisses was disappointed with his behavior of dressing there. The girl made it clear that she was not. In light of this, they seem to be at an impasse, and our protagonist assures that there is nothing wrong. Quite motivated, he asked her to watch closely what was going to happen now, for he was removing the only piece of clothing he had put on that albino body. But to everyone's surprise, he wore something very similar to Borat from his most successful movie. That was such a big folly that Kisses could not stand it and had to hit the albino giant's temple violently with her shin. Next, the two entered the water. She was teaching the basics so he would know how to float and swim. However, the white giant is completely frightened, for he knows that water is the natural enemy at extremely muscular people as muscle sinks. Trying to motivate him, Kisses said that everything needs to be done through relaxation and that she would not let him drown. Now the two need to establish a relationship of trust, and she realized that he is scared like a child. Finally, the giant decided to relax his body and put his head underwater. He is afraid of being left behind, for he knows that if the girdle lets go of his hands, nothing good will happen. Upon opening his eyes after feeling a touch on his forehead, he realized that Kisses was underneath him in the water. For a brief moment, he thought he was flying. Only then did he realize that he was actually drowning, and his body began to sink like a hammer. Somehow, his fears were completely exorcised, and the great albino giant was feeling comfortable looking at that beautiful woman with his eyes. After that brief swim in practice, he acknowledged that it was indeed fun, and in fact he learned too quickly, which left Kisses quite impressed. While they were sunbathing outside, some children came to talk to our hero. The boys approached them, and the giant stated that he is the savior of humanity and that he is a man of love and passion. Those young boys are impressed with his feats, for they heard that he took out several mosquitoes with just one blow. Feeling flattered, the albino giant said that what he had done was not anything too grand. However, the childish curiosity is very great, and they want to see how he performed that destructive move. Kisses began to feel very uncomfortable as she has a bad feeling about this. And in the next second, she realized that a lot of destruction had been caused as the albino giant showed the children one of his moves, leaving everyone completely speechless while he proudly displays the feats of his arms. As Kisses is responsible for him, she had to apologize for the great destruction caused by that completely reckless gesture. Later, the sunset finally came upon them, and Kisses realized that the day was coming to an end. Despite that, it was very fun to be in the company of that completely melanin-free person. And now that they are sitting looking outside, she decided to ask if the great hero has ever loved someone in his life. And indeed, he has experienced this feeling before, which leaves the girl quite unhappy. The truth is that she cannot explain how her heart started to race for a depraved one who cannot dress properly. The boss of humanity is gathered with everyone, and it seems he is already aware of the royalty of the Mosquitos and the supposed hierarchy among them as if it were a colony community. Unfortunately, our great albino giant is unaware of the existence of these experiments, and for the commander of humanity, this is a great opportunity. If they are similar to bees and ants, they might have a chance. They just need to capture the most powerful of them, supposedly the queen, and the war will come to an end. And finally, humanity will achieve the long-awaited victory. The problem is that they need more information. If the giant encounters one of them again, he must capture it. And surprisingly, our dear wax figure had already captured one of them. This left the commander quite surprised, as well as our dear protagonist, who found it a great display of masculinity. Now everyone is saluted, for unfortunately, what remains of humanity is extremely militarized due to the constant war. Once the prisoner is captured, it is time to begin the interrogation. The great man of the muscles closely observes his victim and, in an intimidating manner, says it is a pleasure to meet him and that his name is Dr. Kim. Completely terrified, the little creature responds with a very friendly hello. Next, the powerful hero of humanity shows off his extremely hypertrophied and vascularized biceps, telling the monster the name of each one, love, and passion. And it is time for the poor mosquito to get to know them very well. But after making that demonstration worthy of a Mr. Olympia final, our giant noticed something. Apparently, one of his biceps does not want to contract to its full power. It must definitely be shy about showing off to a mosquito. Noticing that his muscles are a bit hesitant, Dr. Kim said that if the little creature cooperates with his questions, they will not need to do any harm to that mosquito. However, if it insists on being stubborn, there will be dire consequences. Now it is time for the first question. The porcelain giant wants to know who is responsible for giving orders to the creatures, and who this queen I speak of is. In response to the mosquito's silence, he flexed his muscles once again to show that they are full of power. Completely frightened, the poor mosquito stated that they receive orders from the queen, the great mother of all of them, which made the giant ask who she is and what her objective is. Still very scared, the mosquito replied that she wishes to create a peaceful world. While the interrogation is happening, an aircraft flies over the land. Inside there are several extras who are very impressed with the quality of that mission as they are working alongside Kisses herself. Since they are just ordinary soldiers, this is a great honor, as she belonged to the legendary elite squad of humanity. And Kisses was the newest and most promising of them all, becoming an idol for all the soldiers. Despite the complicated situation humanity is in, they are very happy to be side by side with such an incredible person. This made little Kisses remember her family, and that they are no longer part of this story, which left her quite saddened. In the midst of that conversation, she felt a great chill run down her spine. On the ground, a mosquito prepares to take down the aircraft. Feeling danger approaching, she shouted for everyone to put on their parachutes immediately. Shortly after that warning, the hull of the aircraft was pierced by a tree. Something was able to hurl an entire tree in the direction of that plane. A sudden decompression of the aircraft's hull threw several people outside. Unfortunately, Kisses could not grab onto the parachute, and now in free fall, she needs to reach her only chance of survival. The girl continues falling towards certain doom. She needs to act or she will become human meat jelly. As she falls, what you can observe is the aircraft distancing itself, and the ground is getting closer and closer. There is only one solution, and she has a kind of injection in one of her hands. Now when she needs to act quickly, she injected the contents into one of her shoulders. She fell to the ground as she was unable to find the parachute in time. Once on the ground, several mosquitoes were defeated and the humans celebrated, as that battle was very easy. In fact, they held a private competition to see who is the most capable of defeating the mosquitoes. Despite everything, it was a very nice day. It was an easy victory, and the soldiers are feeling more and more confident. The poor souls kicked some heads as far away as possible. One of them was unable to kick the head correctly, causing it to explode. Apparently, it was a private competition, and the one who failed will have to pay for dinner for colleagues. While mumbling a few things, they heard a peculiar sound coming from the air. It seems that the aircraft heading in their direction has crashed. At that same moment, one of the soldiers looked back, seeing a completely white creature. Along with them is a mosquito that seems to be much more powerful, and it calmly carries the head of one of its companions. Back at the humanity headquarters, the porcelain giant has another question to ask. He wants to find a queen of the mosquitoes, so he needs her location. Faced with this question, the poor creature is increasingly frightened and doesn't know how to give the true answer. Then she was reminded that our dear savior of humanity possesses extremely dense muscles honed through violence, which made the poor mosquito say that he doesn't know where she is. He does his best to try to convince his interrogator. Since our boy did not receive the answer he wanted, he realized that he would have to extract the information from the soul of his victim. Back on the battlefield, the soldiers noticed that this mosquito is very different and must belong to royalty. If they need more information, capturing the creature alive has become a necessity. And back at headquarters, a huge mountain of muscles continues to interrogate the poor mosquito, who is already terrified. Unfortunately, he did not eliminate his victim, as he needs to ask more questions and wants to know how many belong to royalty, and the frightened mosquito said there are 5. Each of them inherited an emotion from their mother, and her strength is proportional to the emotion she felt. Now the porcelain giant wants to know how strong a mosquito he is interrogating is. This poor thing is the weakest of them all, but he said that his younger brother is the 3rd strongest. Back on the battlefield, the soldiers are relieved. They managed to cut off a mosquito's limbs, which made them very happy, as they swore they would be killed. One of them decided to approach the creature, saying that it is completely weak and defenseless, and wish that it would die regretting everything it has done. Prepared to annihilate it from existence, a completely demonic mosquito appeared in that place. As the soldier looked back curiously, the mosquito being interrogated said that none of his brothers compared to the strength of the first, since he represents the most powerful emotion that their mother felt, and indeed he managed to annihilate those humans in the blink of an eye. In the words of the mosquito, the strength of the porcelain giant cannot be compared to that of that little hateful creature. The sun is already setting and Kisses has finally managed to wake up. The impact was not fatal, but it left her body damaged. As she looks up into the treetops, she tried to move her body. Her legs and arms are quite tired. She cannot move. After catching her breath a bit, she took the basic precautions to return to combat. Kisses does not have many supplies with her and tried to communicate with the central command. Faced with that deep silence, she stood up and decided to explore the forest. The effect of that drug will last only an hour. Kisses knows she needs to be quick, and she heard something coming from behind her. A completely obese mosquito was heading in her direction, ready for a snack. Thanks to the agility gained from the injection's power, she managed to dodge. But the creature is voracious and chases her through the forest. Using maximum capacity of her ear separator, she managed to evade the creature and trick it into throwing itself off a cliff. Kisses managed to save herself while the poor creature fell to its doom. Only then did the girl realize that the shape of that mosquito was very different. During the interrogation, the mosquito, in tears, said that he tried to tell his brothers to stop, but he was never heard. After hearing that whole story, the porcelain giant is completely moved, saying that his little buddy will overcome this sadness. Only then is the interrogation interrupted by the Chief of Humanity, as he wanted to speak with our hero, since he has a rescue mission for him. Informing the large block of plaster that Kisses' team has disappeared in the forest, and there the girl attentively observes a cockroach. It's been a long time since she last did that, and she had to eat the poor arthropod. Incredibly, the taste was very nostalgic. It reminded her of childhood, but she still doesn't know what kind of mosquito that was. It seemed to be a completely different type. It was large, fat, and had several legs. Thinking that she might be going crazy, she closed her eyes to concentrate. Thanks to her extremely sharp senses, she managed to cut a leaf that was casually falling toward the ground. It was then as she realized her body seemed to be moving quite well. So it's time to try to survive again. Determined to do so, she noticed that the rain had started to fall. As no one likes to get wet, she found shelter. Protected from the rain, the girl closed her eyes and began to think. She is remembering everything that has happened in her life and how cruel things are. It has been this way since her childhood. But what she doesn't know is that a small suspicious creature is hiding in one of those tree trunks and looks very similar to the mosquito she encountered. The difference is that it is at least 300 times smaller. The story of humanity is filled with violence and marked by persecution among humans themselves. The rain had passed and Kisses ended up sleeping in a refuge. When she finally woke up, she found a soldier in that place as well, for she was already being sought after. The lucky thing is that his navigator was not damaged, and as soon as he landed, he began to search for survivors. Unfortunately, he could not find his other companions. He believes that the crash may have decimated those people. Kisses asked if he managed to contact headquarters, but unfortunately, no signal was received. But if it can find a plane, they may have hope, since it also belongs to humanity's scientific team. Back at headquarters, the commander wants to know if there are any updates on that aircraft, but there is no signal at all. And apparently they lost another signal, that of B8, which leaves the commander very frightened. Sweating cold, he began to think about what could be happening that humanity is not aware of. Inside a plane, the powerful hero eagerly awaits the start of his mission. The aircraft is flying over a place full of ice. Walking through the forest, the soldier confirms with Kisses that they were hit by a tree. Whoever did this is deathly very strong, and he hopes not to encounter it in this place, a wish that Kisses shares as well. She said she found a strange mosquito. They had 6 legs and a tail, and what is even more bizarre is that she only felt the creature's presence at the last second. Quite frightened, the soldier asked if the monster could have been responsible for what happened to the plane, that she is not sure. And after walking a lot through the forest, it came across something surprising. They found a large white humanoid body, but without a head. Kisses does not know what this is, and the soldier is very excited that they made that discovery. Apparently, she does not know much about how humanity's days were before the great mutation of the mosquitoes. 2 great wars occurred. And in the midst of all that chaos, a genius was born. He was able to build several autonomous weapons with 2 hands and 2 feet that were capable of holding off the invasion. It is said that only 7 of these artifacts can neutralize a nation in a single day. They call those tools the White Giant. Since then, the Department of Science and Technology has been researching these weapons so that they could be used again against the mosquitoes. The problem is that they do not know how to make them work. Perhaps if they had been used properly from the beginning, humanity would not be in this state. Unfortunately, the genius responsible for creating these artifacts disappeared. As they carefully observed that large white giant, it felt something. Worried, she asked if they are far from the plane's crash site, being informed by the soldier if they would soon arrive there. Inside headquarters, a mosquito that was captured continues to be observed. The humans are worried about any reaction it might have, but the little creature is becoming increasingly sad, as if it were listening to Lonely Day by System of a Down on loop. After walking a bit more through the forest, the soldier found it strange, as the plane should be in front of them. This situation made Kisses increasingly suspicious until her eyes widened. A large, completely darkened lake is before them, and in the middle of it is the plane. That does not seem natural at all, and very cautiously, she touched that liquid with the tips of her fingers. After a brief analysis, they realized that it did not seem to be anything very dangerous, and now they need to find a way to reach the plane. The 2 begin to walk over that strange liquid. Finally, they reached the wreckage of the plane, and the soldier began to carry out his tasks, searching for communication equipment. Kisses closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She knows she needs to maintain her determination. She is a professional that cannot let herself be carried away by fear or anxiety. On the other side, a mosquito approaches. She doesn't always manage to control her own emotions, though she took some pills. Next, she also placed one of those stickers on her forehead that make humans extremely strong. Her arm is not of fighting condition, but she has no other option. She remembered the savior of humanity, and in light of that, she charged into battle. Using her graphene sword, she managed to surprise the creature, cutting it deeply. She did this to prevent them from being destroyed. Kisses managed to seriously wound her enemy. However, he remains alive and fierce, willing to continue fighting. Seeing what was happening, the soldier came to the brilliant conclusion that he needed to act quickly, otherwise, he could be next. Knowing he couldn't subdue the power of that creature, Kisses used another strategy, throwing a smoke grenade at the monster's head. The monster seems to have become very disoriented as it hit one of its eyes, creating a beautiful opportunity for Kisses, who used her sword to strike the remaining eye. Now the creature is quite enraged, even so, it nearly ripped one of the girl's legs off. Determined to win this fight, she threw another explosive device at the creature. Kisses realized that her body was becoming heavier and heavier. Something was very wrong. That creature is in her line of sight, but her senses tell her it is somewhere else. It's very strange. Finally, the soldier seems to have found the wires that will bring power to the communicator. After making the direct connection, he looked back to share the news, noticing that the mosquito that had been trying to attack them had become something even larger. Not even the Kisses can say what that is. Several heads are emerging from that red and terrifying mass. What was once a fat 6-legged mosquito has turned into a long, twisted red creature. The girl realized she needed to act fast as one of the monster's attacks was still aimed at her. Everything happened too quickly, and a creature's hand finished destroying the wreckage of the plane. Kisses watches in complete shock as the subsequent destruction unfolds. The creature, which was already enormous, has become gigantic. She's in great danger. All she can do now is dodge those colossal attacks. Try and use all her agility, Kisses moves away from the creature, but no matter what she does, she remains within reach of her enemy. This made her realize that there isn't much that can be done. Surviving that fight will definitely be the hardest thing she's done so far. For the roles have reversed, Kisses has become the little mosquito trying to dodge the enraged hands. In light of this, she decided to use one of her tools as if it were a whip to tie herself to the creature's finger. Thanks to that, she managed to position herself strategically in the fight, using this opportunity to surprise her enemy from behind fatally. She is in free fall towards the creature's head, ready to bury her graphene sword in it. It is only a moment away from the blow she prepared so boldly finally happening. Only then did Kisses realize she was heading straight for her enemy's mouth, and she was swallowed as if she were a small pill. After a few seconds, the creature realized that the pill was not a multivitamin, but a terrible laxative. But as the fight had ended, the crimson-red mosquito rises and stays still in that place for a while, thinking about its own life. It is reflecting deeply, as something has happened inside it. Kisses managed to use her sword to embed it in the creature's esophagus. She sighs heavily and confused, not knowing what that is. Looking at her sword and that terrifying place, she realized she could have her last day of life there. At the end of that tunnel, there seems to be a bottomless pit. Another mouth is waiting for her. Kisses does not want to lose hope. She continues holding onto the sword, but is becoming increasingly difficult to control her emotions. Overcome by despair, she remembered everything that had happened in her life, the suffering, the persecution, and having to eat cockroaches. The creature is speaking to her telepathically, trying to convince her that humanity does not deserve to exist. All that black lake is being absorbed by the creature's feet, which now in the best me and Genesis even joy and style is taking on a feminine form. The monster, which was once a mosquito, has taken on Kisses' appearance, and this peculiar creature is determined to end humanity's life. Far away, a great headless giant is deactivated. However, a small glow has appeared in the halo of its head. As tears stream from the eyes of the creature that has taken the form of Kisses, several mosquitoes are watching that, and among them, one stands out. Confused memories are being brought forth by this small creature, the vast field of destroyed mosquitoes, and its body was completely burned and is now disintegrating. This was the result of the annihilation of the mosquitoes, and several creatures met their end. Even so, those giant chromosomes decided to persevere. In the midst of the decay caused by the decomposing bodies, something happened. Several red and strange faces had appeared, and by coming together, they ended up producing something even stranger. From the body of that defeated mosquito, a diabolical creature emerged, taking on a form of a mutant mosquito once again. This is that strange mosquito that has a tail and in previous chapters had 6 legs but now has only 4. Somehow is related to that enormous red mosquito that took on the shape of our protagonist. Back at headquarters, the mosquito that was brought in as a hostage told its story to other humans, and now they understand why all its kind were outraged with it, evoking great compassion from its sworn enemies. Apparently, these are the only creatures that truly manage to understand its feelings, and now those scientists are quite moved by the loneliness and sadness that the mosquito suffered throughout its life. One of them is venting that he hasn't had peace lately because he gave life through his twins, and now all his mornings are very chaotic. The saddened mosquito said that one day those children would be good humans just like their father is. For some completely unexpected reason, this conversation turned into a venting session, and the other scientists said he just ended his relationship, which is why he is quite desolate. In light of that, the sad boy mosquito, "My God, I need to give this guy a name. I think I will call him Loneliness." Instead, he has something to say. He wants to know why he can talk so calmly with humans, and the scientists say that this is only possible because he is cool. Moreover, they can understand each other thanks to the conversation, making it clear that he is also a very cute mosquito. Only then does he reveal that he has another ability. This statement piqued the curiosity of the scientists, and the mosquito said he would show how it works. Rising up, he simply ate half of the body of one of his new friends, completely ending its life. That was his ability. No matter what he does in front of humans, no type of hostile behavior is directed at him. The scientist who survived witnessing that praised this ability, saying it must be very useful, and then the mosquito said they lost by bringing him to the headquarters. Now he showed that with his big mouth he will consume another human. Outside, the newly formed giant Kisses continues walking through the forest. Where she's going, there are large towers made of mosquitoes. Using her large hands, she began to attack these creatures. An unexpected result for the tormentors of humanity, who now decided to turn this manhwa into a battle of megazords. In the best style of Attack on Titan, Kisses prepared a very powerful kick, hitting the head of one of those newly formed creatures. All this while she thinks she is defeating humans. What a complete madness this story is. Kisses, now in her Attack Titan form, continues to vigorously defeat the enemies. The kick she delivered to the head of one of those creatures was extremely devastating. Now she turned her attention to the other jerk who is still standing, sending in another completely overwhelming blow toward its skull. Meanwhile, at humanity's headquarters, some extras noticed that something was wrong. They found the bodies of those scientists lying on the ground and decide them as the lone mosquito. The first thing they ask him is if everything's okay. It didn't take long for them to discover that the one responsible for those actions was the mosquito. The humans reprimanded him, saying he cannot eat people like that as few remain. In response, he apologized, revealing what he did in the least painful way possible. And indeed, the mosquito Loneliness has a very interesting power, as the humans found that justification quite plausible. It didn't take long for one of their heads to be used to unlock access to that room, since the mosquito loneliness also ended the lives of those people. Besky began to walk calmly through humanity's facilities and found two scientists who were talking. Apparently there's a project that was set aside, but everything changed after Dr. Kim appeared. They ended up encountering the mosquito loneliness and asked what he was doing there, as he should be in another room. The creature replied that he would like to go to a place with many humans. Immediately, the two thought a residential area, as it would be the most crowded possible. Telling him where he could find more people, Lo Manus warned that he would do his best, leaving behind the bodies of the women who helped him. Meanwhile, in the middle of that enormous forest, which now looks like a lawn since titanic creatures are fighting, the mosquitoes will not surrender. After being beaten by kisses, it stood up once again, very upset about what happened. It's time to return the affection received. They all start to stare at each other as if they were in a Mexican standoff. And finally, Kisses in her titanic form began to be beaten. And even though she was outnumbered, she managed to fight back. It's as if her body was much more powerful than those idiots. In fact, the only problem is that whenever she attacks one of the creatures, she ends up being attacked by the other. However, the strength of the script is strong with her. Kisses manages to show them that it will be a great challenge. But she was caught off guard by a bizarrely well-placed blow, causing her colossal body to fall towards the ground. The Megazord mosquitoes gather around her, noting that where there was once a head, there is now nothing. In a room at the Refuge of Humanity, some men are discussing very interesting topics. It seems they are great admirers of human culture. Their meeting was interrupted by the Mosquito of Solitude, who wanted to know if this was a private residence, soon realizing it was actually an agency focused on cultural restoration. The poor creature apologized for the mistake. Even so, ended the lives of those young men. All of this while being observed by the figure of Ashuka from Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is indeed one of the best mangas ever created by man. Finally, Solitude managed to find a very crowded place. It is attended in quite fearful attitude in front of all those humans. But his purpose there is only one. He came to bring extinction to the surviving humans. Not satisfied with this outcome, they all raised their hands and began to brutally beat what was left of Kiss's body in her titanic form. They are completely furious with that traitorous mosquito. Kiss's body is being turned into pate, and even in those conditions, she managed to move one of her arms. A survival of some living beings is maintained and provided by the demise of others. In a completely bizarre way, Kiss's hand began to drain the life from that large Megazord mosquito, and she did this to all those enemies of hers, who are now completely absorbed by her red body, causing her to transform into something even more powerful. She became the very embodiment of violence. Near where she is, another creature appeared. It is that demonic mosquito, with horns on its head, and is definitely powerful. He did not like what had happened to his brothers and revealed to Kisses that his body is as muscular as that of our beloved hero, the savior of humanity. Now he is in his final form, showing that he must at least work out every day and use some things discreetly. Consumed by hatred, he declared that he would send Kisses to eternal rest. However, before he could make a move, he was surprised by this red existence, which struck him with as much power as Satama himself. However, the force of that impact did nothing to the creature's body. Thanks to the proximity between them, he managed to counter Kiss's attack, sending her far away. The body of the red creature fell to the ground and now bears a rather angry smile. Rising to return to combat, he was hit once again in the face. And that's not all, as the horned mosquito was quite furious. He continued to strike his opponent as if she were the reason for his existence. After all those blows, it became clear that there was a significant difference in power between them. The power of the horned mosquito was so great that he is practically reshaping the entire landscape of that region. And now Kisses, or Diswritten Mosquito, remains for history to tell what happened to her, who seems to be completely defeated. The horned mosquito is about to finish this fight. He grabbed the traitor of his race by the head and began to squeeze it with all his might, hoping that with this he could finally give rest to his brothers who were absorbed by her. Without realizing it, one of the red creature's hands became a large needle and tried to pierce him through the ribs. But the horned mosquito only needed to squeeze Kiss's head even harder. Her armor was strong, much stronger than the hardness of that needle, which ended up breaking after trying to pierce him. And as this happened, the horned mosquito thought it would be interesting to vent all his rage. After delivering repeated blows to his enemy, something detected all this violence. Praise be to God, it's time for a headless giant to appear, and his head began to shine as if it were a galaxy. In the subsequent panel, the mosquito that seemed unbeatable will now have to learn to write with the inner hand. At a completely unexpected turn of events, the headless giant was reactivated, and now he is going to annihilate all this excess violence. The demonic mosquito was not pleased at all to have his arm violently removed, and showed his new enemy that he has an enormous regenerative capacity, restoring his arm to its previous form. However, the headless giant had more attacks to execute and ended up sending another one towards the villainous mosquito, who managed to dodge. He was using all this speed to evade the attacks from that headless doll. However, his movements were completely defensive until he finally managed to direct himself towards his new enemy, trying to hit that portal where his head should be with one in his hands. And in this way, the demonic mosquito discovered that he was unable to hit him as there was an invisible barrier which repelled him hundreds of meters away. Unwilling to accept this blow, the villainous mosquito hurled several trees in the direction of his enemy, hoping to surprise him once again with his strikes. This time, he tries to force his way through the barrier at any cost. The force he exerted was so great that his skin was completely scraped off. Even so, he was thrown far away once again. The creature began to regenerate shortly after, but this time, Parda's head was missing. Meanwhile, Kisses in her red mosquito form remained defeated on the ground. She was having some reflections on what survival is and how her life has been difficult. It seems that no matter what kind of creature you are, nature is always out to kill you. So Kisses needs to do everything possible to keep living. She remembered when she was a child and had to hide in the forest from the mosquitoes and were hunting humans. The same fury she is feeling now is shared by the demonic mosquito. Everything is trying to kill something. And in this way, she became once again willing to return to the fight. Kisses had to eat butterflies and cockroaches to stay alive. And it won't be now that she will give up on surviving. It was when all these animalistic and brutal feelings gave way to something else as once she was embraced, causing the girl to remember the family she had for a chapter in the story. It seems that this sudden reflection made her body revert to a human shape. Not only that, she also remembered the great porcelain giant, which seems to be an enemy of any kind of clothing. It was then that she realized that humans are much more than just the extinct. There must be something that gives life meaning, so that it is worth living. Only then did she realize that she was completely naked and did not know what happened in her last moments. One thing she is sure of it, if that creature completely swallowed her body. While she's trying to understand all of this, the demonic mosquito seems to have ended the life of his enemy. For with one of his hands, he sees what appears to be a spine and in the other an arm. Now Kisses observes that mass are muscles filled with hatred, completely frightened. And looking at her, the mosquito became very intrigued, for somehow the human soul seems to have regained control over the body. Treating Kisses as if she were just an insect, he prepared his hand to flick her, which was enough to forcibly remove her arm. The demonic mosquito finds that challenge far too easy. And even in the face of danger and after being hit in that way, Kisses seems to have completely surrendered. She decided that she would not react since life boils down to suffering, and a mosquito will make that an offering to the Great Mother. What he did not expect was that a large white and naked giant was falling from the sky. It was at that moment that Dr. Kim appeared to prevent the worst from happening, and finally Kisses realized that what makes life truly worth living is love and nothing more. Now the great duel between the two strongest creatures is about to begin. The clash between the fists is so devastating that the skin covering those muscles is annihilated. It seems that our dear guardian of humanity is not so powerful after all. And once again they strike each other, causing the skin covering the muscles of their arms to be completely torn. The battle between them is definitely fierce. Both are quite determined to emerge as winners. They both hit each other in the face this time, causing a great shockwave. Now that victory is the most important thing, the great porcelain giant and the demonic mosquito spat in each other, creating a massive explosion in the midst of the impact. They resume their attacks. But this time, the great naked giant managed to use the technique, brutally hitting the stomach of the demonic mosquito. This made it spit blood, but the creature was also cutting and took the opportunity to strike the giant's bare back. All of this while Kisses watches attentively, and observing all that carnage, she realized that if humanity were strong enough to know the future, it wouldn't need to live in fear of what might happen. Definitely their lives are very pathetic. Even so, the great naked giant does his best to keep fighting. As the skin covering your bodies is being flayed, Jess has realized that humanity wastes a lot of time. She is afraid of not having the opportunity to express her true feelings. The two powerful creatures are now becoming breathless. At that moment, Kisses said that the savior of humanity is capable of winning. She began to cheer for him, and that completely motivated him, causing him to deliver an even more powerful blow to the face of the satanic mosquito, strong enough to explode its face as if it were a watermelon. Now Kisses carries no regret, for she did what she wanted to do, and took the opportunity to vent as well and say that she likes the savior of humanity in a romantic sense. This was so unexpected that he stopped attacking just to look at her and make sure he heard exactly that. Kisses reiterates that she likes him a lot, and the great naked giant watches her thoughtfully. He was left speechless after hearing that a few times. Elsewhere, a squad of humans is searching for those who have disappeared. They try to contact the base, as they were aware of the information delivered by the Solitude mosquito. To everyone's surprise, they ended up finding a white figure levitating in the middle of that vast emptiness. Only then is it revealed to us what emotion is represented by the Solitude mosquito. It is the essence of despair. Now it had taken on its angelic form or something close to it, able to explode humans as if they were potatoes. Kisses seems to have been embarrassed after having made that confession. While the savior of humanity is completely changing color, he, who is visibly white, is now red with embarrassment. He asked if everything was okay with his friend, and only then did Kisses realize what had happened. Inexplicably, the arm she had lost was completely regenerated. And now that she looked down once more, she realized she had opened her heart to the hero of humanity while being completely devoid of clothes. This led her to a new level of self-embarrassment, for she realized she is as depraved as that giant. After this brief moment of interaction between them, they noticed that there was another powerful mosquito in that place. The two watched that new figure attentively, which now slowly opens its eyes to observe them, causing immediate reaction. Hiss's skin and flesh were being purged for her body. It was necessary for the savior of humanity to place himself in front of her to prevent that from becoming even worse or fatal. He tries to withstand all that energy being directed at them solely by the eyes of the mosquito of despair. Kiss's body was almost completely obliterated, and protecting her is the great porcelain giant. But there isn't much he can do in this situation, and even his muscles are being completely obliterated. Only then did the mosquito of despair realize that the mother of all does not wish for them to perish now. Thus, he decided to hold back his attack in front of those powerful existences. The great giant tried to recover somehow. His face is completely disfigured and his body quite injured. Despair said that these existences of violence and suffering will one day find peace, and the responsibility to make all this happen lies with the mosquitoes. After having collected the body of his older brother, he ensured that one day they would meet again. In a room inside the Humanities headquarters, two people are casually talking when they're surprised by a bizarre alert. The world population is rapidly decreasing. They watch those numbers and become increasingly hopeless, as they do not know the reason that could have caused this. Inside that room, they realize that all those deaths were caused by a single mosquito. But after observing it, they fell under its completely brutal effect, since no hostility is directed at it no matter what it does. After passing this information to the person responsible for humanity, the rest of the humans became completely enraged, as all this was caused by a single mosquito. And what they cannot explain is why this information was passed in such a casual and carefree manner. The worst part is that the headquarters was invaded by a single mosquito, so they need to find out what really happened. To discover what it caused that, they examine the recordings from the room where the small mosquito had been trapped, realizing that something violent had happened there. This only raises more questions, leaving the survivors quite concerned. What is worse is that the commander of humanity directed Dr. Kim to another operation, leaving the rest of the people in a vulnerable situation. And he realized that there is a very strange energy surrounding this event, considering they received the information very calmly. Even though what happened is serious, everyone is treating it as if it were unimportant. Humanity ended up sending a reconnaissance team, and quickly the squad encountered the mosquito, and they were immediately annihilated by that harmless creature. Watching all of this, the commander of humanity became quite furious. He managed to dodge the effects of the creature after stabbing his own hand with a knife and asked to speak directly with the reconnaissance squad. There were still some people alive in that place, and the commander told them to close their eyes and shoot in any direction, and the soldier was worried about the physical integrity of the mosquito. He ended up taking too long to act, being completely devoured. Using the soldier's communicator, Despair said that among the men there is someone with great mental ability, thus he will have to kill him personally. The mosquito politely asked him not to leave the spot where he was, as he would come to get him. Now, the general needs to think of a way to solve this catastrophic situation, since he is the only one capable of saving the people in that region. Using the general communication, the commander began to speak to everyone who is in that place. All access points will be blocked in the next minute, except for the central passage. He also communicated that they are currently going through a very dangerous situation and all survivors must follow the instructions. Leaving his office, he warned the lieutenant that if he did not return in 30 minutes, the entire sector should be blown up. This is the price to be paid if his actions do not yield results. As the commander walked away, the other commander, who wears an eye patch, approached, quite worried. He does not believe that a mosquito could have infiltrated there, since this region is very cold. In fact, the commander went to him to recruit 2 veteran and brave soldiers, as it is time to hunt mosquitoes. He ended up encountering the creature in the hallway and was flattered that he had made an effort to do that. Despite being very welcoming, this is definitely not a welcome party. The captain was surprised by the commander, who was making a big fuss over such a small creature. Then the mosquito used its ability, asking those people to give him their lives. The commander is doing everything possible to resist this command, for he knows that that seemingly innocent mosquito was responsible for taking many lives. The creature became quite worried upon seeing the gun pointed at its face. All this while the commander is gathering all his determination to pull the trigger. But unfortunately, he is just a human, and his willpower cannot overcome the creature's ability. Despair said that fear is a very useful emotion, as it can prevent crisis from happening. Thanks to its ability, it can completely deny human resistance. This small creature can control the brains of its victims, preventing other actions from occurring. That is why humans can only act in a friendly manner in its presence. And now the mosquito approached to consume the commander's head. However, it was this approach that he was waiting for, and before being finished off, he managed to grab his enemy, using a pro wrestling move against it. Thanks to this, he was able to throw the creature to the ground and completely subdue it. Everything he is doing now is just a very friendly sports practice, dodging the creature's ability. With the gun in hand, the commander is ready to shoot at his own companions, hitting one of their legs, leaving everyone quite surprised. Seeing what happened, the captain completely lost control, and the commander said that if he was not hit now by the shots from his companions, he would continue shooting. And he did exactly as he said, hitting the leg of the other soldier. As there was no reaction from those men, he made it clear that he would aim for the head next time. Faced with that great impasse, the captain realized that he needed to react, and the commander hopes that in this way his companions can shoot at his body through the creature. The problem is that his strength is already waning, and Captain Toblerone, also known as Chocolate and Ho, is already at his limit. For despite that situation being extremely complex, he and the commander are childhood friends. Finally, the commander's forces are exhausted, and the mosquito managed to free itself from his grip, leaving the commander desperate, as the creature was heading towards the captain, who ended up being reached by the dreadful creature. After witnessing that, the commander was left completely speechless, and the little mosquito was impressed that human had devised such an interesting plan. Now it was time to return the fear he felt, asserting that he would provide that man with an extremely painful death. The first thing the small creature did was pick up the pistol that was on the ground. He knows it was made solely for the purpose of taking human lives. It truly is a very frightening artifact. This proves that humans are degenerate, having created something to end their own kind. Definitely, the commander must be an equally cruel person. The two stare firmly at each other. All the humans can do against that mosquito is act in a friendly manner. Now the bear began to act according to his words, shooting towards the commander's shoulder. Indeed, that tool was quite efficient at taking lives, and as he said this, the commander threw something in the direction of his eyes. It was a flash grenade which completely blinded him. As soon as he regained his vision, the creature realized that the commander had disappeared. However, he couldn't have gone too far as he left a trail behind with his own blood. The commander tried to enter a room, and after using his identification, he managed to gain access to it. While trying to escape, he was hit by another shot. The mosquito said that after seeing him flee, he felt quite stunned. Seeing that there were war robots in that room, he asked the commander if he really thought that would be enough. The truth is that machines are even easier to control, and humans should be a bit more grateful to mosquitoes. Moreover, it is astonishing to believe that they have never ventured into that cold region simply because it was cold. The Great Mother knows of humans' potential for violence and that they are beings inclined towards cruelty. Still, she felt a bit of compassion for humans. Saying this, the mosquito fired another shot. It was she who allowed a small number of them to continue surviving, a number so insignificant that their capacity to interfere in life would be non-existent. All they needed to do was leave the mosquitoes completely in peace, but that will now be a thing of the past. And firing again, despair warned that the time had finally come, the moment when all living beings would find true peace. After hearing his completely foamy speech, the commander struggled to drag his body through that place. He began to remember everything that had happened up to that point and the comrades he lost in battle. One of the great moments he started in was the design into headquarters. Now that Dr. Kim has returned to humanity, all other plans of humanity have taken a back seat, and the GC project is one of them. But now the commander realizes that he might have to use that artifact. But the mosquito pointed the pistol at the commander's head, saying that the end had finally come. The commander decided to accept his fate, but after pulling the trigger several times, the mosquito realized that the pistol had not fired even once. The creature was startled by this, and the commander used his last effort of life to reach a computer that was within his grasp. With his fingerprint identification, he managed to access that system, leaving the mosquito responsible for the feeling of despair completely desperate. From that place, a large coffin seemed to have emerged, and inside it was a human body, and I may be wrong, but it is very similar from the violence boy who perished in the first chapter. Lying on the ground is the commander, completely exhausted. The mosquito observes this as it seems confused. Only then did the human body decide to open its eyes. The mosquito realized it was just another ordinary person. Soon after, his face was brutally stomped on by the apparently ordinary human. As humanity was almost being exterminated, eventually their troops would come to an end, and the GC project was a way to transplant a person's consciousness into another body. This eventually raised ethical questions regarding clothes, whether they would be the same people they once were, and only those fit for combat were considered as possibilities. Despite the difficulties of the project, the most powerful person was considered to be used as a test subject. On the ground, the commander is very injured, but now he is determined. The violence boy is surprised that the commander was so severely injured by such a weak insect. In response, he simply throws a knife into the boy's hands. In light of this, he turned his attention completely to that little mosquito. Trying to use his ability, despair took on a pitiful form, asking how he would be able to attack him. But the truth is that the violence boy found that little insect extremely cute. He is so cute that he felt the urge to tear it to pieces. And using the knife as a tool for that, he began to carry out his actions. It didn't take long for him to finish off the creature and find all of it quite tedious. And now he wants explanations from the commander, as he is sure he died in combat. Indeed, the commander confirms this information, and observing the boy's language, he presumed that the consciousness transfer project worked perfectly. This leaves the violence boy quite excited. Now he wants to know what happened in that last operation. The commander revealed that in the last task of the elite squad, Kisses was the only survivor. However, they managed to recover Dr. Kim's research. The violence boy was very upset to discover that Kisses, who was weak, ended up surviving while he did not. Once the situation was resolved, the commander used his cell phone to contact the medical team as he needed immediate care. Shortly after that, he simply lost consciousness as he was completely injured. Thanks to this, some lives were preserved, such as Captain Chocolate's. However, many others perished during that invasion. The commander's life is now hanging by a thread, and returning to the human headquarters is Dr. Kim carrying Kisses in his arms, who is still very injured. Unfortunately, the result of those actions will only lead to even greater violence. Kisses being properly treated so that she can recover. Meanwhile, humanity is walking closer and closer to its own end. And due to having that intimate interaction with the biology of mosquitoes, Kisses is no longer the same. Once at the humanity base, she woke up and her eyes were very different. To everyone's surprise, Dr. Kim is now dressed and he was informed that Kisses finally woke up. The problem is that she is a bit different. The savior of humanity went to her in the company of other humans. Noticing that something was grown on the girl's back, it is definitely not a human structure. You mourn that, as a precaution, those other people should not approach her. Fighting against the violent impulses his body is feeling, Dr. Kim told the girl that everything is okay. He simply hugged her while reciting a poem, trying to calm her down. After that, he simply hugged her while reciting a poem, trying to calm her down. He asked her to try not to think of anything else, just to relax. Gradually, while being cradled by Dr. Kim, Kisses fell back to sleep. In another place far from there, it seems that the mother of all has finally found what she was looking for. When everything happened to humanity, from the first act of violence, there was a mosquito that ended up drinking that spilled blood. It was trapped in a piece of amber, and the first blood that was shed through violence finally belongs to the great mother of all. In the middle of a forest, a large tower of mosquitoes rises and it keeps growing, spreading its roots everywhere. After everything that finally happened, the commander recovered from his injuries. Cat and Chocolate ended up losing one of his arms. However, there was a surprise box. Now, having a sewing machine gun attached where his nose picker used to be, Dr. Kim can still vividly remember the memories of the confrontation with that last mosquito. This makes him reflect a lot on that situation, as he certainly would have been defeated. Not to mention that the violence boy now has a new opportunity to live. After having her biology completely transformed, Kisses returned to practice in the training room. But those enemies are no match for her. The girl had indeed become much stronger. The commander said that now they would see an image recorded by one of humanity's drones. A large structure made by mosquitoes is growing in the forest, and it goes towards the sky as if there were no limits. This is a truly massive colony and was discovered recently. Mosquitoes from all over the planet are gathering. The leadership of humanity is becoming very concerned about this, including Dr. Kim. The commander warned everyone that they do not know what caused such a gathering, but one of the insects belonging to 1LZ had mentioned that the time has come for all living beings to live in peace, something that Dr. Kim also heard. It may be that the peace they are talking about involves the extinction of all creatures. Dr. Kim is wondering why they are gathered in that place. For the commander, this can only mean one thing. They are preparing for the final battle. It seems that Dr. Kim also agrees with this assessment. Some of humanity's leaders question the effectiveness of nuclear weapons, and the great porcelain giant made it clear that this will not work. In fact, the commander wants to know more about the combat abilities of that other white mosquito, which Anicaps thought was the same mosquito as Despair, but they have nothing to do with each other. Dr. Kim mentioned that there are two from the royalty who are very powerful. The black one is as strong as he is, but the one that really raises concern is the white one. Kim cannot explain how, but the gaze of that creature is capable of destroying things. Its regeneration ability barely managed to save it. The doctor has thought of various ways to prevent this from happening, but so far he has not reached any conclusion. After hearing his information, the commander of humanity became genuinely worried. Now he wants to know the situation of Kisses and whether she is still human. The doctor knows that the mutation caused by the mosquitoes was a result of mixing various segments of DNA. Apparently, the mosquito that fused with Kisses was of a type that humans did not yet know. Humanity knows that the first mutants absorbed everything around them. Thus, they managed to strengthen themselves quickly. What motivates these creatures is the desire for violence, and for now, Kisses has managed to control these impulses, which could make her turn against her own species. Human consciousness takes control of some actions, even though violence is in the heart of all individuals. That is why she cannot lose her humanity, a struggle that renews itself for her every second. In the training room, some scientists observe Kisses' performance, which is truly phenomenal. While the girl is deep in thought, she managed to dodge a knife that was coming from behind her. This was done by the boy of violence, who seems very interested in the girl's new version. Kisses realized that he had indeed returned to life. His arrogance is still the same. And almost without any emotion, she said it is very good to see him again. The boy of violence wants to know how she managed to survive on that occasion, suggesting they play a fun game. He wants to test his new body and the strength he possesses. This brings Kisses several memories that were common in her old life, so she said she is not interested in that kind of practice. The boy of violence tried to attack her immediately, but Kisses held the Griffine's sword with her own hands. And while leaving her companion very surprised, she broke the weapon with great ease, showing him that she is no longer just any existence. In light of that, the boy of violence was left speechless until Dr. Kim finally arrived in that room as well. He seems to know that somehow the two were already friends, and the boy of violence is surprised that Dr. Kim really does not like to wear clothes. As he knew about the compatibility of the boy of violence, he prepared a special gift for him, a drug specially made for the boy's biology. And in this way, he will be able to become the equivalent to the great porcelain giant. After receiving that gift, the boy of violence became a bit thoughtful. Later, Tim underwent several tests. The doctor asked how she has been feeling in recent days, and Kisses replied that she is feeling a bit strange. While he is distracted, reading some things, Kisses has a question to ask. She wants to know why Dr. Kim is still fighting on the side of humanity. The truth is that Kisses never stopped to think about this, and after she fused with that mosquito and accessed its memories, she learned much that was unknown. After that, she began to hate humans as well. That is why she wants to know Dr. Kim's answer. The porcelain giant revealed that he fights for a more peaceful world, and that he had a friend once who wished for the same thing, and now he plans to fulfill his dream. He also has a friend he made recently who really wants to have a picnic. This is one of the reasons that keeps him fighting. As soon as she heard this, Kisses became very emotional and started to cry. It is as if she no longer has any hope and asks Dr. Kim if such a day would really come in the near future. With great enthusiasm, the porcelain giant affirmed that soon they will experience something like that. After receiving that gift from Dr. Kim, the boy of violence managed to surpass level 10 in the train room, something he could not do before. He still clearly remembers what happened to his sword when he tried to attack Kisses, and that deeply upsets him. The commander of humanity is now going to give instructions to the soldiers about the next operation. They managed to identify a large colony of mosquitoes, and it seems that all the mosquitoes on the planet are heading to the same place. They don't know what this means, but they are sure it poses a risk to humanity. The objective of that mission is to completely eradicate that cocoon along with the mosquitoes that are in that place. The biggest challenge they will face are those two creatures, the demonic mosquito and the mosquito that seems to be an angelic entity. The recommendation for the soldiers is that they do not approach the white mosquito in any way, as it is said to be the first of the royalty. They will be up to Dr. Kim to distract the creature long enough for the operation to take place. Meanwhile, Kisses and the boy Violence will deal with the demonic mosquito, leaving the rest of the soldiers with a clear path to destroy the cocoon that is in that place. Through the drone, they also discovered that the mosquitoes serving as the structure for that large tower have strengthened their bodies, and they are not reacting to any type of attack, making that battle crucial as control of the battlefield will be essential. Thanks to the ability of the angelic mosquito, access will not be easy, so they need to start from below. The rest of the details of this operation will be delivered to the individual devices of each soldier. This may be humanity's last chance to change the fate of the planet. And during the recent events, the commander knows that the mosquitoes could invade that headquarters at any moment, so a failure could be catastrophic. Even so, although the chances are slim, they need to try, as this means the future for all of them. So he sent the characteristic chorus of the survivors. For all that effort is being made for humanity itself. The boy of Violence and Kisses, after hearing that entire speech and feeling that emotion, remain completely apathetic. Reclusive Dr. Kim is still thinking about what had happened in his last duel. The eyes of that mosquito are indeed a source of great mystery, something he cannot stop thinking about at any moment. Finally, his moment of solitude is interrupted as Kisses is knocking on the outside of the door. With the permission of the great porcelain giant, she was able to enter. Still completely silent, she sat next to him. She revealed that she is now more accustomed to the wings on her back. At first, it was a bit uncomfortable, but she has accepted that she has become half mosquito. Dr. Tim told her that it would be really cool to have wings too. And indeed, stopping to think about that aspect, it is very cool to have wings. But that is not what she came to talk to the doctor about. The next day, they will face something that could be quite decisive. Worried, Kisses would like to know if the great porcelain giant would consider the possibility of escaping with her. That way, they could forget everything about their past lives and start anew in a place far from there. After hearing that proposal, Kim acknowledged that it is indeed very interesting. And in fact, Kisses hoped that this could happen in their lives, wishing them that Dr. Kim does not die in the next operation, since she needs both of them to survive for the picnic to finally happen. After hearing this, the great albino giant promised that he would do the best he could. Shortly after that, Kisses got up from the doctor's bed, revealing that she was excited for the picnic, and little by little, she is leaving that room while being watched by Dr. Kim. The two finally say goodbye, wishing that that night could be peaceful. The next day, the sun illuminates the sky of that cold place. Fear is the most present thing in the heart of each of those soldiers. Even so, they need to protect the future and shine with courage. The aircraft were already being loaded and prepared for the operation, but there was a significant exception in that place, is the boy Violence. The commander wants to know why he would not participate in that mission, and the boy Violence revealed to be quite surprised by those words, as he will not obey inferior people. Everything he has done so far is meant to collaborate with these people to further increase his strength, and now that he possesses overwhelming power, he can do whatever he wants. In this way, he will be able to create a personal empire and will govern all these inferior life forms. His plan is to make an army with his clones and eradicate the mosquitoes from the face of the earth. While delivering this completely crazy speech, Dr. Kim approached him just to hit him on the head. Our great porcelain hero does not seem impressed by those words, just like Kisses, who completely ignored the boy Violence. But that was more than enough for him to realize that he is still very far from true strength. He started shouting, quite upset, that one day he will be powerful enough to rule them all. After this little outburst, the operation returned to its natural course. Several aircraft are heading to the place where the mosquitoes are gathering. Worried about that potentially decisive battle, the commander of humanity asked God to bless everyone. A large battalion of humans is approaching the gathering of mosquitoes. The tower built by them is so colossal that it even overshadows the brightness of the sky. Dr. Kim is watching that formation closely. The first creature that presents itself to them is the demonic mosquito, who found those unexpected guests too audacious. The boy Violence asks Kisses if that is the target they should face. Humanity begins to act, and the demonic mosquito said that those people are like moths getting too close to the flame. The boy Violence found that mocking, and Kisses realized that he is already very accustomed to death. But apparently there is some tension between them, as the boy Violence promised that after that mission Kisses would be next, something the girl is eager to see if he can actually put into practice. On the ground, Captain Chocolate noticed that Dr. Kim is managing to climb that formation. Then it was the soldiers' turn to put their part of the mission into practice, and need to do it with their own hands. And in this way, everyone began to climb that great formation, as if they were insects climbing a large tree. Dr. Kim is striving to reach higher and higher, But the demonic mosquito will not make this mission easy. He showed the humans what his true body looks like, quite muscular, and he wants to know why the destroyers of this world still have the courage to raise swords. Violence realized that this is going to be a lot of fun, but he was soon surprised by one of the creature's blows, which was capable of causing great devastation in that place. That blow was not fatal. As he managed to defend himself, however, he realized that he is indeed facing a monster. He even had the audacity to blame Kisses, who distracted him from the fight. Only then did the girl say that he should pay attention. Once again, the demonic mosquito charged at the boy Violence. This time, he tried to hit him in a brutal and definitive way, but the boy managed to dodge, going on the offensive alongside his companion. The two were showing a satanic mosquito that swords are dangerous tools. However, it seems that their strength is little compared to that of this giant of muscles. The creature is very pleased to move its naked body in the middle of that place, but every second it continues to be surprised by its enemies. Kisses almost managed to hit him this time but was caught off guard. While trying to defend himself on the ground, the boy Violence approaches to attack him stealthily. The demonic mosquito is indeed very cunning and managed to prevent the worst from happening. So far, this fight is nothing more than a great waste of time for him, and the boy Violence realized that this way he will end up dying once again, until his face was stepped on by Kisses, who used his companion as if he were a trampoline. He did not like it all being hit this way, and Kisses made it clear that she did this to make him return to the fight. In fact, the boy Violence knows that if it weren't for the gain enhancement drug, he would have already gone to the wonderful world of ideas once again. Faced with the difficulty of this fight, he realized that his life is very boring. Kisses reminded him that what they are doing there is just a distraction. Victory is not something possible. All they need to do is try to survive. Even though he was aware of this, the boy Violence does not want to take orders, and now they will attack together, wielding their graphene swords against the satanic mosquito. However, the creature defended the blow, and once again showed the humans that the strength of mosquitoes is truly impressive, throwing her enemies away. Now it is prepared to spit in that direction. Kisses knows exactly what that means, so she tried to save her companion. A large beam of energy shot towards them, and the two poor souls fell from the sky as if they were mosquitoes, falling in the middle of the forest, almost defeated. The boy Violence tries to recover. That battle is too fierce, and his body is not holding up. Moreover, he does not like it all being saved by someone weaker than him. Faced with this, he decided to contemplate the possibility of using that drug given to him by Dr. Kim. At first, the boy wanted to know what it was about, and the porcelain giant replied that it is a much denser variant of the drug they use. The hero of humanity was only doing that because it would be necessary for the mission they were about to execute. The boy Violence asked if that was his trump card. The hero of humanity said yes, since he has great resistance to the side effects of the drugs humanity uses to fight. Moreover, he is very capable in combat. Excited, the boy Violence asked what the side effects would be after administering that drug. Dr. Kim said he would become a complete mosquito. Even knowing the risks, he used this tool. As soon as he was revived, the boy Violence underwent several physical exams to confirm that his health was very good. However, the doctor still has very important information to pass on to him. The consciousness transfer project had several clones, but after it was abandoned, those bodies were destroyed with the exception of a single body. To create another clone, it will take 3 to 4 months of research and production. So if the boy Violence loses his life during that period, there's nothing they can do. After using that drug, his body began to undergo very intense changes. One of the boy Violence's goals is to surpass Kiss's strength, and now his face is completely transformed. After making this great transformation, he calmly approached the satanic mosquito. The two creatures stare at each other threateningly and butted heads like mountain goats. But this time, the strength of the satanic mosquito was not enough to subdue our boy. While the battle raged outside, the human squad finally managed to reach a hall inside the insect tower. None of them could say what that was, and Captain Chocolate analyzed the space very carefully. Amid all those soldiers, 2 mysterious creatures appeared, greeting the humans. Immediately, the soldiers drew their swords, ready to act. The creature asked if all these men were really in a hurry to end their lives, as they seemed very foolish. Taking the offensive with questions, Captain Chocolate asked what they had done with Dr. Kim. Then the mosquitoes revealed that they did not get his way, since that would make no sense. They remember very well that they were defeated last time, and indeed that bald human has his own adversary, and that mosquito is patiently waiting for the doctor. On the other hand, these mosquitoes appeared there to eradicate all these humans. Knowing this, Captain Chocolate warned his men to act according to the plan. They did not want to remain stagnant at that stage. All of them charged to attack these mosquitoes. Using graphene swords, they managed to cut them into several small pieces. At first, it seemed that the fight was over, when the captain realized that those small pieces were turning into other mosquitoes. Now the human soldiers were outnumbered. They were completely surrounded by their enemies. Inside that strange place, they saw that some of the insects were entering holes in that structure. The captain realized that the forces were dividing. Some kind of sort of strategy was in play. Outside, the boy Violence continued to fight fiercely against the mosquito Violence, but his strength was not enough. Even though he has combat experience, he has been heavily subdued, and after being hit by a powerful blow from the demonic mosquito, he was thrown far away. But thanks to his renewed body, he managed to return to combat in the blink of an eye, brutally striking the face of the demonic mosquito. The force behind each of his blows is so great that it destroys the skin on his hands, and the boy Violence keeps hitting as if his life depended on it, until one of his hands was destroyed by the impact. After several successive blows, he was already without hands. He ended up being hit hard by his opponent. Far from there, the boy Violence tries to recover after that violent onslaught, and still breathless. But with his hands recovered, he noticed that the demonic mosquito was already on his side. The fight between them was still undecided. Kiss's body remains fallen in the middle of the forest. She is unconscious. The tower made by the mosquitoes is now so large that it can be seen from space. Finally, the great giant with porcelain skin and devoid of hair met the true enemy. The angelic mosquito was already waiting for his arrival, showing to be much friendlier than his peers. The angelic mosquito earnestly asked the doctor not to interrupt what was happening. Now, here taken to the beginning of the boy Violence's life, he was already a very strange person. Very much so, he even killed his pet cat. Obviously, his father found that very unusual, so he was put into training to learn to kill mosquitoes. And indeed, the boy Violence is the son of the commander of humanity. As his potential for violence is enormous, killing mosquitoes has become something very natural. All he needs is a tool that provides him with entertainment. But since he is a very different person from the others, on the day that entertainment ends, when there are no more mosquitoes, he will turn his violence towards humans. One fine day, he was informed that Kisses would be integrated into the elite squad. It was on this occasion that the two met, and all that was in the gaze of the boy of Violence was great indifference. Finally, after taking that devastating blow, Kisses managed to get up, but she is very injured. Before her eyes is the boy of Violence being completely subdued by the demonic mosquito. Moreover, she also noticed that her appearance was no longer conventional. Something had happened. There is little time left for the worst to happen. Kisses needs to act immediately if she wants her friend to continue living. And that is exactly what she does, appearing above the creature's head and preventing it from launching its devastating spit towards her companion. Kisses really managed to prevent something worse from happening, but the cost for that was very high. Once again, she was thrown far away by the demonic mosquito, giving the boy of Violence the opportunity to react, but his blow was not very severe, being launched far away with great force by his enemy. Now both combatants need to recover since at least the demonic mosquito was injured on its jaw. With her companion on her shoulders, Kisses asked if he was okay, but she was immediately pushed away. The boy of Violence had become something close to bestial. What he knows about Kisses is that she is an irritating existence, as she does not belong in that place, those things. Still, he manages to focus on his true objective, which is to defeat the creature. His blows become increasingly devastating, managing to break the teeth of the demonic mosquito. The boy of Violence is unstoppable. He resolved to find motivation to continue battling in a devastating manner, and even though he managed to cause extensive damage to his enemy, his strength had run out, and the satanic mosquito asked if that was all he had to offer. Before him stands the boy of Violence back in his human appearance, and with his arms completely scraped. He remembered his companion and how she irritates him, just by existing in the same place as him. Before he could be finished off by the mosquito, he was saved by our dear protagonist, who does everything possible to prevent both from being finished off by the giant mosquito. Recovering is becoming increasingly difficult, and that mosquito seems to be an utterly relentless force of nature. Kisses observes that monstrosity while contemplating the limits of her own strength. She alone has the strength to move her arms, and the creature shows no signs of fatigue. And yet something completely surprising happened. The boy of Violence, who is an extremely narcissistic and slightly psychotic person, sacrificed his own life to save his companion. While Kisses remains completely perplexed by what she has witnessed, the boy of Violence suggested that she not keep that foolish expression on her face, showing that it is his last gesture in that battle. A boy of Violence immobilized the hand of the mosquito and had passed through his abdomen. Kisses does not know why he did this and fell into despair because her companion has no remaining clones. The great truth is that the boy of Violence wished to take Kisses' life because she makes him feel normal. Being by her side amidst all that growth made his capacity somewhat stifled. While they trained, he tried to take her life several times but was never able to carry out his actions. For a long time, he did not understand why things happened this way, until one fine day he began to know himself better. All of this happened during a mission with the elite squad. The boy of Violence understood that the flaw was within him. From the beginning of that battle, he already knew what the outcome would be. He knows how strong Dr. Kim is, as well as the strength of those mutant mosquitoes. Genuinely, him being a strange person, he wanted to keep Kisses away from all that, which is why he had that emotional crisis before the mission. What is even more bizarre in all of this is that he did not understand Kisses' tears, and all he has to say is that his companion irritates him just by existing. Poor thing, nothing was left for the beta. Shortly after these words, the satanic mosquito lifted him with its hand and threw his body away. But to his surprise, an even more powerful transformation occurred. And it is time for the true violence to begin. The creatures look at each other in a threatening manner and start to scream as if they were primitive beasts, until the claws of the boy of Violence move at great speed, completely cutting the body of the satanic mosquito. Even though the creature was mortally wounded, it manages to prepare another concentrated energy strike in its mouth. Since it needed time to charge this attack, it ended up being sliced once again. The boy Violence would not allow that to happen, so he directed himself towards his enemy's mouth, sinking blows into the energy that was concentrating, and shortly after that, he tore the head in two halves using his own hands. This is the true out-of-control boy Violence, and because he used that tremendous force, his body collapsed. Folks, now here's my comment. It could be the boy Violence, It could be Kisses who did this. We will find out later because the illustration of this work is very poor. Back at the tower made by the mosquitoes, it seems to be a bit shaky now. Some soldiers continue to climb that structure, and they do not know how much longer it will take to reach the top. Through the communicators, the soldiers are informed that enemies are also climbing through the holes. This started to worry them because the space is very narrow. What the soldiers did not know is that the enemies can move inside the structure. Little by little, they began to be annihilated by their pursuers. Even though they managed to cut those abominations, they reform as if nothing had happened. Not even Captain Chocolate's bullets are effective in exterminating them. He realized that his strategy was not working, just like his men who were already hesitant to use their swords. And after an extensive battle, they were completely outnumbered. Those mosquitoes are eager to finish off human lives, and Captain Chocolate realized that this multiplication would have no end even though his enemies are weak. They cannot continue in that battle since exhaustion is their true enemy. Even so, they need to persevere for as long as possible. And in a very provocative manner, the mosquito revealed that there is no limit to its multiplication capacity. Even if it gets close to that, they can only regroup into a single body. But the creature also has a sadistic side and it wants to have fun with its enemies. Meanwhile, at the top of that great tower, Dr. Kim continues to observe the cocoon. He discovered that the mother of all is inside that formation, which is confirmed by the angelic mosquito. Dr. Kim realized that the human squad is already late, a sign that something must have happened. Still dialoguing with his enemies, Dr. Kim said that there would be no awakening of the queen. Shortly after that, he allowed his DNA to begin to corrupt. Dr. Kim's expression began to change as well. His teeth became very sharp. He is undergoing a transformation never seen before. This is the price he has to pay to have hair again. His skin darkened, his instincts became primitive, but at least he is no longer bald. At that moment, the angelic mosquito realized that they would have to resolve fames through physical conflict, so he is eager to see what Dr. Kim is capable of. Opening his mortal eyes to confront him, he noticed that Dr. Kim had disappeared. The great hero of humanity had turned into a dark marble stone. He is very violent. Thanks to his great strength, he managed to swiftly approach the angelic mosquito. And just like the first time, his skin was completely flayed by the power of those eyes. Dr. Kim does his best to stay on the offensive, but he ended up being subdued by the gaze of the angelic mosquito, who continues to maintain his same defensive posture. Even though he was pushed away, Dr. Kim managed to completely regenerate, but indeed he did not get closer to his enemy. Now we do not know if Dr. Kim is really in control or if he has surrendered to his primitive instincts. Back inside the tower, the mosquito proposed to Captain Chocolate that they play a game. The commander found the proposal very ridiculous and promised that he would cut his enemy into tiny pieces. Only then did the creature remind him that there are companions climbing through the tunnels and that they would soon be visited. The creature knows the humans want to reach the top of that structure and through that gain plans to give them a chance. The side that manages to come out as the winner will have access to the top. Faced with this proposal, the captain decided to accept the game. This left the mosquito quite enthusiastic. He and all of his copies began to smile as if they were degenerates. Shortly after that, they returned to a glued mate in front of all those humans. Back in his original form, the mosquito asked if the captain was ready, but the man wanted to know what the rules were. The mosquito revealed that he was impressed with his tenacity, so he would share the rules of the game. Moving his hands, he recited a numerical sequence, 3, 6, 9. The captain seems very confused after hearing that. The mosquito, after his improvised presentation, believes he's the funniest existence in the galaxy, but Captain Chocolate didn't understand anything. The creature said that humans cannot recognize the best extermination game they themselves had created. Growing more concerned, Captain Chocolate asked for a better explanation of the rules. This time, the mosquito said they would decide who goes first as if it were a game of rock, paper, scissors. The winner is the one who starts attacking when in a slap on the face of the loser. If the face turns in the direction of the attack, it's a defeat. But if he managed to look in the opposite direction of the attack, it's a victory. Captain Chocolate just can't understand why the game have that stupid number. Surprisingly, the mosquito revealed that he needs to be hit 3.69 million times to lose, and no one could survive that. Captain Chocolate is shocked that humanity's ancestors created such a stupid game. Agreeing to these rules, he revealed he had his own conditions for playing. After his victory, he would remain in that place and send one of his men to the top of the structure, since if he could withstand the mosquito's attack, he would certainly be considered victorious. The creature did not object to that reservation. The soldiers are not happy with this decision, but the captain warned the thing he to do as ordered. The mosquito made that proposal because he was already getting weaker. The more he divides, the weaker his power becomes, but in a battle like that, his chances of victory increase. And that all those copies, it's possible they could hit his original body. If that happens, it would be the end. The first clones he made were indeed strong and managed to inflict some damage. However, the humans quickly adapted and are already defending themselves. That's why he proposed the game. This is his only chance for true victory. Now that he has returned to being a unique entity, he is prepared to kill a human. The game of rock, paper, scissors may seem to depend on luck, but since the physical strength difference between the participants is enormous, that doesn't apply. So that is completely unfair to the human. Captain Chocolate realized that the first attack would come from the mosquito, who believes that the battle will end with that same movement. He prepared his hand to slap Captain Chocolate's face, and determined to solve that problem, he hit him with all his strength. However, the mosquito could hardly believe what his eyes were seeing. Even though he hit Captain Chocolate with all his strength, he was unable to move his face. The creature immediately became upset, believing that the captain got lucky. Now that he has won the first round, one of his men is free to go to the top of that structure. They played once again, throwing rock, paper, and scissors to see who would deliver the slap. And once again, the captain was hit in the face. In light of the damage suffered, he remains unscathed while the mosquito is increasingly upset. Finally, I understood this game. Every time the captain wins a round, he releases a pass for one of his soldiers to ascend the structure, but to truly win, he would have to defeat all possible copies of the mosquito. I think that's it. That's why it would be impossible. The two were engaged in that friendly combat, but the mosquito is getting more and more enraged. Only one soldier is left to ascend, and the creature cannot believe what is happening. Captain Chocolate remains determined. After receiving several slaps to the face, he was the only man left on that floor. The captain barely has the strength to stay standing. In light of this, he began to provoke his enemy. Quite irritated, and the mosquito ended up losing that round. Recognizing the danger the human could pose, his eyes widened in fear. The captain did all this deliberately. He wanted the creature to lose control, so he could surprise him by changing a behavior pattern, telling him that the true power of humanity comes through courage and wisdom to overcome their weaknesses. Now it's the captain's turn to use the rules of the game to his advantage. When he was stopped by the mosquito, who thrust his hand through his abdomen in a very unfair manner. The mosquito warned that only fools follow the rules, and indeed, the captain agrees with him. What the creature doesn't know is that the machine gun attached to Captain Chocolate's hand has a powerful explosive capable of destroying everything within a 300-meter radius. Now the device has been activated, and the captain planned to use it to destroy the queen, but he is pleased with what has happened. Outside, one can see the destruction caused by the explosion. Almost out of control, Dr. Kim began to remember Kiss's wishes when that war would end. He does all of this so that they can achieve peace one day. Before him is the angelic mosquito that has once again opened its eyes. Outside the tower, Kisses finally began to return to her original form. Opening her eyes, she realized that her companion had been defeated. She got changed what has already happened. The girl decided to look at the top of that structure. In that place, a battle is taking place between the mortal eyes and Dr. Kim in his supreme form. Every time he tries to get closer, his skin and muscles are separated from his bones. He does everything possible to continue advancing meter by meter, but the force of that gaze is simply relentless. Dr. Kim tries to force his presence, but he is subdued. As the damage spread through his body, his fury increases as well. It seems that the anger has managed to cloak him with a protection coming from the very plot. As if his body were on fire, completely incandescent, Dr. Kim managed to approach the angelic creature, and his fist is almost striking those eyes. But before anything like that could happen, the force of the gaze increased even more, preventing the blow from being delivered. Dr. Kim was pushed away once again. His body is quite weakened, he needs to regenerate. Even though this is necessary, he decided that he would continue moving forward. But everything he does in front of those eyes is completely futile. Until the angelic mosquito decided to ask if that wasn't strange, as Dr. Kim has no reason to keep attacking. After all, there's more human life in the body of the angelic mosquito than in this version of Dr. Kim. And indeed, they are truly very peculiar existences. The first humans finally managed to reach the top of that structure made of mosquitoes and found Dr. Kim battling. The angelic mosquito realized that the containment in the middle of the tower had ultimately failed. Those soldiers do not know whether to wait for the tacton, so one of them stood out among the rest, saying he would lead the action. The soldiers are properly aligned and prepared to advance. Before them stand two extremely muscular guardians. They raised their swords ready to attack, but they were quickly annihilated by those guardians. All of this while Dr. Kim continues to be subdued by the gaze of the angelic mosquito. The battle between the soldiers and the mosquitoes is very fierce. Even though there were several casualties, they managed to defeat the guardians. Now they can dedicate themselves to destroying the cocoon. However, things will not be that easy. The angelic mosquito said that if they crossed that line, everyone would die. So it is best that they do not make foolish choices. Amid those soldiers, one of them warned that he would cross. He decided he would make that sacrifice to distract his enemy, giving Dr. Kim an opportunity to attack. He knows that his actions will be catastrophic, however, he has a glimmer of hope. As the combat unfolds, he gathered all his courage to cross that line. Determined to take that path, he saw that Dr. Kim continues to advance to attack. The soldiers decide to advance at the same time that Dr. Kim continues attacking. Some of those men realize that through that distraction, Dr. Kim managed to get him closer to his enemy. It's a sign that the strategy is working and may have a chance of victory. In this way, they will be able to take that nefarious creature to hell. In what would be the last moment of their lives, the soldiers decided to remove their helmets. All of them are willing to make the greatest of sacrifices. As the battle rages fiercely, the commander of humanity waits anxiously. All those soldiers at the top of the structure remove their helmets. A woman, after closing her eyes and taking a deep breath, prepares to cross the fatal line. On the other side, Dr. Kim is doing everything possible to try to defeat his enemy. The woman realized that her actions are necessary for victory. As soon as she crossed the line, her body was completely obliterated before the eyes of her companions. The commander of humanity knows that those soldiers will certainly not return. Nevertheless, the sacrifice is necessary. Dr. Kim is completely focused on his battle, determined to deliver victory, and those brave soldiers feel neither sadness nor anger. As they are exterminated, they realize that this is an inevitable consequence for all forms of life in the universe. This is how things happen. With their eyes open, the creature seems not to be making an effort to prevent Dr. Kim's actions. That cycle of life and death seems to be infinite, and little by little, the soldiers are being annihilated. This is a beautiful paraphrase for life, as life must flourish through the sacrifice of some. The power of that angelic mosquito is truly devastating. A cycle of life, death, and rebirths, it seems to be part of the universe. At this very moment, humans are fighting for the future of their lives. But from the mosquito's perspective, they do this only to perpetuate suffering towards other forms of life. That is why it shows no mercy towards the lives of soldiers. For the life of humans is a curse. And in a completely unusual manner, it seems that the mosquito is reaching its limit, its skin is peeling, and its body is corrupting. Every time a soldier crosses that line and the mosquito needs to distract itself to attack, Dr. Kim manages to get even closer. There are only a few soldiers left, and the commander of humanity is already very anxious. Dr. Kim continues to push himself to the limit, until the last sub-soldier is about to make his crossing. All of this while Dr. Kim tries to brutally strike his enemy. At this point, the body of that angelic mosquito is completely compromised. All that remains are its bones. The brave soldier knows he must cross that line. As soon as he passes through it, his body is completely disintegrated. Turning to dust, now Dr. Kim's fury has reached his peak. His fists are practically in contact with the face of that creature, but there is still resistance. At that moment, he is assisted by Kisses. By strengthening his companion, Kisses managed to contribute to the victory of that battle. As he strikes the face of the angelic mosquito, he remembers Kisses' desire to have a picnic. Finally, he managed to defeat an enemy that seemed invincible. Little by little, Dr. Kim is returning to his humanity, and his body is regenerating. His skin has regained its light color, but is still quite confusing. It is as if the savior of humanity does not know what has happened. Kisses is no longer with him. Looking up, he realizes that the structure of the cocoon is very different. The bodies of all the mosquitoes belonging to royalty are now disintegrating, turning to dust. That dust is now returning to the cocoon, to the mother of all. Dr. Kim observes how that grand structure is changing in appearance. Completely surprised, more of the branches of that cocoon struck him in the abdomen. It seems to be sucking his vital energy. All of this so that the structure can grow even more. From above, it is possible to see it. That tower made of mosquitoes now resembles a tree, and its roots are spreading across the planet. Such a grand and magnificent formation that can be seen from space. Not knowing what it could be, the commander of humanity becomes very nervous, since they have no idea what might have happened. The proliferation of that tree is so rapid that it has reached the human headquarters, annihilating the lives of many people. All of this is being carried out by the mother of all, who, with her grand power, managed to completely envelop the planet. In a completely empty dimension, an old bearded man began to cough. It was then that he realized he was in a completely different place. All his eyes can see is a distant horizon line, a blue sky, and completely white ground. Faced with that emptiness, the man was surprised, until he finally encountered a peculiar woman. Her skin is entirely white, just like her hair, but the pupils of her eyes are a deep red. This is the mother of all who told Dr. Kim that it has been a while since their last meeting. After all, that figure before her is his true father. Violence and destruction are what pursue humans. No matter what happens, these events remain immutable. In fact, one of the greatest triggers for technological progress is the desire that human beings have to destroy one another. When Dr. Kim was still young, he realized that he hated his own species, which seems to have been shaped by brutality. Humans have a tremendous tendency towards selfishness and to give in to trivial desires. He vented to his assistant that, in truth, everyone is made of trash. By venting so energetically, he made her cry. In response, Dr. Kim apologized. While holding a rope with his hands, he realized he needed to do this immediately. After hanging himself by the neck, he wanted to put an end to the violence that existed within him. Fortunately, he was rescued by his assistant, who seems to be accustomed to those emotional crises. A little calmer, she asked him not to hate humanity so much, even though she recognized there was truth in his words. Noticing that the girl was very calm, Dr. Kim asked why she did those things. She has enough money to set up her own lab, so she doesn't need to be tied to a mad scientist like him. The answer for her is simple. This assistant does all of this because she loves Dr. Kim. He is completely overwhelmed by these words. The glow of this woman is so radiant that it makes him completely uncomfortable. Now the assistant wishes they could start working very intensely. There are two categories of genius: those who can be understood by the world, and those who will never be comprehended. The first type ends up achieving great fame and wealth, while those who are not understood are reviled and lived in solitude. This is the fate that Dr. Kim had to bear in his life. However, sometimes even people like him get lucky, as if his assistant had been sent by God, just to understand him and help him overcome all the difficulties brought on by loneliness. After a long time researching, they arrive at something interesting. That little creature they are seeing now would help and change the world. Is the first mosquito, and the assistant recognized that he is very cute. Still very intrigued, they realize that observing the creature is a necessary fact. In just one day, the mosquito had changed its physical form to the one they are seeing now. After 7 days, it began to grow rapidly, and its appearance remained unchanged. After 15 days, it seems that it stabilized, and at the end of a month, it remained the same. The assistant began to worry as that little creature had not undergone any changes after so much time. Dr. Kim decided to observe it in nature, so the mosquito was placed outside. For a brief moment, the mosquito faced a frog that was in that place. In that controlled environment, the assistant thought that the mosquito might be herbivorous, since it did not try to attack a prey smaller than itself. Dr. Kim was not expecting something like this, and the creature seemed to have caught a whiff of something. Surprising the assistant, the little mosquito embraced something. And now, as it comes into contact with that apple, its body began to change. Indeed, that is quite interesting and captured the attention of both researchers. It was that they realized the mosquito had done something quite unusual. To their surprise, and light all the violence in the world, a little mosquito made flowers and was offering them as a gift to its creators. Dr. Kim imagined that the mosquito had absorbed the genes of the apple to produce those flowers. The assistant immediately extended her hand to accept the gift, but Dr. Kim prevented that from happening, as there's much they still do not understand about this creature. His assistant tried to reassure him, especially since she was already touching a creature with her other hand. Dr. Kim became completely desperate about this, and in his desperation, he asked her several questions, wanting to know if his assistant had been hurt, until the two finally became emotionally stable again. The assistant now cannot let go of a little mosquito, as this tiny one is a very cute and gentle creature. Contrary to all expectations held by Dr. Kim, its creation turned out to be a peaceful and very loving creature. This is the cute mosquito, the first of its kind. In some bizarre way, the Waramo men gave way to those biological weapons, the headless giants. Human soldiers watch those artifacts in silence. Dr. Kim is focused on his research, and outside, rumors are spreading about his growing madness. The biological weapons seem to be not functioning. This is the chance for scientists to start studying them. While researching the mosquitoes, Dr. Kim is interrupted by his future assistant, Miss Lee. She tries to introduce herself to him, and the girl says she is interested in that research. Dr. Kim believes that soon the mosquitoes will rebel against the human race, which makes him very furious, as other researchers seem to ignore what is obvious. After hearing this, Miss Lee asked if she could join this research as well. Much time later, it managed to produce the first cute mosquito. The little creature is happily feeding on a piece of carrot. As it eats joyfully, Dr. Kim becomes increasingly outraged. Then he realized that, indeed, this creature is very loving. He did not expect something like this, and his assistant seems to have liked what they created. Dr. Kim believes he was fighting to prevent the extinction of humanity, but apparently he did something completely different. And by creating that little cute creature, he became quite happy. A feeling is also shared by his assistant. It is time to probe the behavior of that little creature. They realize that the mosquito is capable of absorbing genes from other creatures and changing its body composition according to its will. Dr. Kim speculates that this is possible due to the genetic absorption history of mosquitoes. This creature is not just a mutant, but a completely different level of life that can communicate with every living being on Earth. Certainly, they have the potential to become humanity's best friend. Several days pass, and Dr. Kim asked how the mosquitoes were doing. His assistant replied that they were all fine. While he believes his research is progressing peacefully, the news is filled with conflict and war, something that leaves Dr. Kim quite disappointed. For the first time, the mosquito saw what happens outside that laboratory. He and his companions were horrified by that violence. Every day, human beings are exterminated by their own kind. That brutal and violent scene left the mosquitoes impacted. It was too much for them. It was then that Dr. Kim realized what was happening. Having witnessed that violence through television, some mosquitoes lost control and attacked the rabbits. It was on that day that they became lethal and dangerous creatures. Dr. Kim immediately left that room, taking Miss Lee with him. Due to the mosquito's ability to connect with anything, they unfortunately sympathized with human violence. It was then that Kim realized that the mosquitoes would never become humanity's best friend. As soon as they come into contact with violence, they will perfect it even further, initiating an endless cycle where violence is everything. Dr. Kim began to wonder if this was divine intervention. Observing the laboratory sealed from the outside, he noticed that the mosquitoes began to grow. Trying to neutralize those life forms, he released toxic gas inside. After several tests, some mosquitoes ended up losing their lives. And as a way of escape that prison, the mosquitoes tried to chew through the steel doors, revealing a monstrous strength in their jaws. Thanks to the laboratory's defense systems, they were exterminated. Dr. Kim became disappointed again, as a life form that was once pure is now determined to massacre its kind. While he remained deeply reflective, there was that first cute mosquito that was able to be preserved from violence, and humans try to justify their existence, and every time it is denied, it leads to violence, causing a collateral cycle as well, which is the desire to be right. That is why the world is sinking into war. The exacerbation of this feeling ended up producing the mosquitoes. Dr. Kim conducted a few more experiments, and this time the mosquito managed to devour an adult leopard. To know the limits of that mutant creature, he needs to continue conducting tests, releasing a lion to confront the mosquito. And after looking deeply at the mosquito, the lion felt fear. The two beasts attacked each other. But as expected by Dr. Kim, the lion was no match for the mutant creature. No matter how many times they try, the result is always the same. Not even an adult elephant was able to subdue the small creature. The mosquito seems to feel no fear, thanks to all those tests, as greatly increased in size. Moreover, its ability to handle violence has been perfected. Dr. Kim's hypothesis is that the more they fight, the stronger they can become. Another major obstacle is the mosquitoes' ability to multiply, as they can all become mutants in the blink of an eye. There's nothing humanity can do anymore. When he does not understand is that the mosquito accompanying his assistant remain unchanged. It seems that he does not like violence. Perhaps he absorbed a lot of affection from his companion. Dr. Kim thought that maybe that creature could persuade its kind, but the way it reacted to violence suggests that this hypothesis may be impossible. The doctor thought about sharing the existence of the mutants with the world so they could think of countermeasures. But it didn't take long for him to conclude that this could not be possible, as the world would fall into chaos. Lost in his thoughts, he was surprised by the arrival of Miss Lee. She brought a cold drink for the scientist as he couldn't stop thinking about matters that still have no answers. She also recommended that he not listen to such depressing music, suggesting something more upbeat. Dr. Kim said that this is not his musical style, but his assistant joyfully ignored him. Dr. Kim does not know how her happiness never disappears. It seems to be the perfect counterpoint to the violence surrounding the world. And curiously, he asked why Miss Lee is always cheerful, and the groom replied that she is grateful for her own existence. An answer that left Dr. Kim confused. However, Miss Lee believes that life, besides being a miracle, is a gift. This is quite different from what he believes. As for the doctor, existence is suffering and a curse. More and more curious, he asked if she has any kind of wish. For if she has something like that, he promised he would do everything possible to achieve that result. Miss Lee thought deeply, revealing to him that she wishes for world peace. A peaceful world is what she desires most for everyone. Not only did Dr. Tim hear those words, but soon did the little mosquito, friend of humanity. Motivated, Dr. Tim stood up and said they would look for ways to achieve this goal. On the other hand, the more he tried to find a way to neutralize the mosquitoes, the more he realized it would be impossible. Until one beautiful day, something happened in his laboratory. Dr. Kim's nose suffered a small bleed, leading to an accidental discovery. The scientist could hardly believe his eyes, so he called his assistant to analyze it as well. The union of human cells with mosquito cells produces a powerful energy. This could open doors to even more interesting things. If a person could control this power freely, perhaps this is the answer they have all been searching for. This is how the porcelain white version of Dr. Kim emerged. Outside, the conflicts among humanity are becoming increasingly violent. Those headless biological weapons were created for this sole purpose. They are completely devastating and seem to be guided by a hooded man who continues to bring destruction wherever his weapons are aimed. From the various tests conducted by Professor Kim, any cell that was not human was promptly absorbed by the mosquitoes. The only one that managed to evade this situation were the human cells. Trying to inject those cells into a living animal, the result was catastrophic. Dr. Kim began to feel brave and decided he would test it on his own body, even though he recognized that this hypothesis could be very dangerous. In light of this, he realized it would be necessary to stabilize that drug, but he was already very tired. Walking through the laboratory, he finally found Miss Lee, who was watching the news. It's war news. Invasions continue to happen, and the conflicts seem endless. Citizens are being informed about the danger, and they must take shelter immediately. Dr. Kim realized that yet another war was underway. Hidden in Miss Lee's clothes is the little mosquito, quite frightened. No matter what happens, people are always swept away by the tides of conflict. There's nothing they can do in the face of all this. Someone just waiting for the opportunity to eradicate their own adversaries. And while they were watching the news, the laboratory's security system alerted them that intruders were in the place. Dr. Kim immediately found that strange, as nothing like this had ever happened in his history. The defense system would be activated, but Assistant Lee canceled this action, leaving Dr. Kim very worried. With a smile on her face, she assured him that eventually he would understand everything. Assistant Lee placed the mosquito on the table, saying she would soon return for it. After opening the door to that room, she informed him that she would soon return to see Dr. Kim as well. The poor man fell into despair and tried to stop her, but as soon as that door closed, she did so definitively, as Dr. Kim's access had been denied. He banged on the door in fury, as he did not know what would happen to his assistant. Walking through the corridors for the first time, Miss Lee felt sad. On the other side, there were several armed men, and their advances halted when they encountered that woman. In a very friendly manner, she said it had been a while since their last meeting. The man removed his mask and informed her that she should accompany them calmly. In another place, far from there, the destruction caused by biological weapons continues to escalate. It seems to me that all of this was caused by a little girl who's now crying. My God, this is surprising. The little girl responsible for all that destruction is Dr. Kim's assistant. Still locked in the room, our dear scientist is quite desolate and worried. Going straight to the peace and love mosquito, he asked the little creature to replicate his assistant's digital identity. Apparently, the strategy worked, and Dr. Kim managed to find her, as well as those armed men. Miss Lee did not expect something like this, and the soldiers told her not to approach or they would fire. Worried about what could happen, she asked him not to come any closer. But our dear Dr. Kim did not listen to her and ended up being shot. After the shot was fired, several mosquitoes that were inside test tubes underwent a grotesque reaction. As Dr. Kim fell wounded, his assistant fell into despair. Now that armed man pointed his rifle at the scientist's head, all while the mosquitoes were transforming. Miss Lee is very worried, and she began to plead for Dr. Kim's safety. With her emotions running high, she said that if she was not obeyed, all those soldiers would disappear. Immediately, those men began to tremble in fear, and their captain told everyone not to raise their weapons. It was then that they realized the ground was shaking in a very suspicious manner. Looking back, that attack squad noticed that several mosquitoes were approaching down the corridor. Dr. Kim was equally concerned and not knowing what these creatures were. The men opened fire. The bullets hit the creatures, however, their numbers were absurd. In a matter of seconds, those soldiers realized that mere gunfire would not be enough, for those monsters were advancing with great ferocity. Miss Lee seems to be using some kind of ability now, as her eyes have blue halos. Faced with the imminent danger, Dr. Kim injected his neck with an experimental drug. His speed is now so great that he goes unnoticed by ordinary eyes. And with a single blow, he was able to explode the creatures. Not only his assistant, but the soldiers also cannot explain what is happening. Dr. Kim charges at those monsters as if he were a monster himself. The small difference is that the power he possesses is overwhelming. Looking back, you saw his assistant and Miss Lee realized that Dr. Kim was like a wild beast. His hands have now turned into claws, and his teeth are extremely sharp. None of those men belonging to the attack squad know what to do. After the danger was slightly diminished, the assistant and the professor exchanged glances, until that transformation began to become unstable and Dr. Kim's arm started to disintegrate. He is definitely going through deep agony. Miss Lee knows that this drug is still experimental and that Dr. Kim cannot control this energy. One of the mosquitoes tried to attack her, but at that very moment it was pulverized by the power of the assistant's eyes. My dive, now we know where this absurd power comes from. All of this is carried out in a very mysterious manner. The soldier asked Miss Lee if she could explain to them what was happening and if that was a biological weapon that was being studied. The real information is that what they are witnessing will be an unprecedented disaster, and soon everyone will know that Dr. Kim worked day and night to save the fate of humanity. After everything that happened, she asked for a moment from those soldiers, as they would like to treat the doctor. The truth is that they cannot stop her if they decide to disagree, so she simply asked her to hurry. A few minutes later, Dr. Kim is properly medicated and in a safe place. After sighing in relief, Miss Lee understood that she had done her best. Once outside, she informed the soldiers that she had completed her task. After all that violence occurred, the laboratory was empty. The invaders were leaving. Miss Lee does not know when this cycle will end. It seems that people always want to find someone to blame for their own sins. Eventually, the day of judgment will come for all of them. In a small country where war was common, a genius was born. In fact, a very promising and talented girl whose talent has no precedent in history. In the intelligence center, the officers are in despair. Several divisions are being exterminated in the blink of an eye. The general, very worried, wants to know what's happening, but he cannot receive any images from the battlefield. All lines of communication have been obliterated. At that moment, the building in question is destroyed. Outside, a girl appeared, and behind her, a headless giant. This promising child was at the same time a hero and a demon. In just one day, she instilled a deep fear in the hearts of humanity, and shortly after that, she disappeared. Back in that same place, Miss Lee said it had been a long time since the last time. The bald man, possibly the authority in that room, told her that the situation is urgent. They need the biological weapons to be activated once again. She must already know that that country is under attack from several nations in this world. As soon as she disappeared, her enemies made the same decision. They want to end what is, in fact, a ticking time bomb. It is time for her to finally achieve what she had tried before. Could a transcendental power that only she possesses. Through these actions, they could establish a new world order. Apologizing, Miss Lee warned that she no longer desires such an outcome. She does not want to rule anyone through force, as many people would lose their lives in the process. Transforming the world of violence and anger is not the correct path. All she desires now is to love the people around her. After hearing this, the bald man asked if they could use her power just to protect the borders, but Miss Lee does not want to condone any violence. Faced with this, the bald man becomes enraged as violence is already happening and people are losing their lives every day. However, these words make no sense to Miss Lee, as the cycle of violence will continue. In fact, she knows that these men must have a plan B, especially since she would never hurt any of them. The bald man realized that he would achieve nothing. The only solution would be to execute that woman. Since enemy nations are after her, if they learn that something has happened to her life, there is no reason for the war to continue. And even in the face of the bald man's threats, Miss Lee agreed to her execution. Her calmness deeply disappoints the man, so he ordered that the execution take place. Shortly after that, the same soldier who kidnapped her from the lab took her tied up to another location. Since Miss Lee's appearance, several nations have wanted to seize her research, and many others have intensely wished for her life to be ended. Several assassination attempts have occurred, and public opinion is that this woman must be crazy. Who saw her as a normal person, and all she desired was a world of peace and tranquility. But in reality, Miss Lee is the very sadness that walks in this world. The soldier responsible for Miss Lee's capture does not share the cries of the population, for if it worked for her, they would all be dead. Even so, he will carry out his job and ask if Miss Lee has any last words to say. The one assured him that everything that needed to be said had already been said. However, she has something particular to say to this man, and she thanked him for protecting her. The soldier said that everything he did was just his job. To the population, he, who will be the executioner, is the true hero of that narrative. And before he could deliver the final blow, the little mosquito, friend of humanity, revealed itself to be hiding in the clothes of one of those men. And fearing what could happen, it hid in Miss Lee's clothes once again. Noticing that the creature was there, the woman asked for one more minute, as things had just changed. She made it very clear to the soldier that if her execution happens now, it would be the end of humanity. The man seems not to have understood her words, but Miss Lee made it clear that they have no time to waste. The population immediately found the delay in the execution strange. Everyone began to shout intensely for that woman to be executed. Miss Lee tried to engage in dialogue, acknowledging that everyone was angry. But the truth is that none of those people are willing to listen to her words. Realizing that her execution would not be postponed, Miss Lee accepted what was about to happen, asking Dr. Kim not to hate humanity. After witnessing that, the poor little mosquito had preserved its purity surrendered to corruption. Its eyes are no longer the same. It is immersed in this great spiral of anger and violence. On that day, humanity was condemned. That is a significant event for all of humanity, and Miss Lee's execution is being filmed and broadcast to various nations, all while being celebrated by a completely degenerate population. For some unexpected reason, the transmission was interrupted. People think this was caused by the furious population. The nations that were in need of those facts seem to be calmer. Several soldiers want to know what happened, and it seems that a search and seizure squad found her body. The entire area is deserted within a 2-kilometer radius. All they found was her body. Gradually, inside his laboratory, Dr. Kim wakes up. He remembers what happened, having been shot and transformed. Only then did he realize that everything was real and that Miss Lee is no longer his assistant. Breathing heavily, Dr. Kim became worried. As soon as he put his feet on the ground, a little robot initiated a transmission. It is a hologram of his assistant, who left a posthumous message for him. Dr. Kim is quite surprised to see her once again. Miss Lee said that he must be very confused, and as he must have discovered, she is the scientist who took on the codename Sadness. She protected her country from invaders several times, as she is responsible for creating those autonomous and biological weapons. However, she is no longer part of this world. These words left Dr. Kim even more worried. He immediately turned on his television, confirming something in the news. The execution of scientist Sadness left the population quite enraged. It seems they went out of control with that. Immediately, Dr. Kim realized what happened to his assistant. The hologram asked him not to be sad, as everything she went through was merely a consequence of her own sins. However, she wishes for Dr. Kim to save humanity, for a great destruction will come upon everyone. The truth is that Dr. Kim is still deeply immersed in grief. He is still able to remember his assistant's desire for world peace. And after receiving all this information, he left his laboratory, seeing the outside world once again. Overcome by great sadness, he misses his companion. All he can do now is scream in deep sorrow. After a few minutes, Dr. Kim became inconsolable. He began to remember the gaze in that place in the company of his assistant. Part of her final message involves a secret area in that laboratory, with the information and equipment necessary to combat the mosquitoes. The research has not yet been completed, so it is up to Dr. Kim to find a solution. The fate of humanity is now in his hands. The subsequent experiments were very painful, as the DNA holds many accumulated memories, and most of them are of death and destruction. And for thousands of times, Dr. Kim found himself completely consumed by the desire to destroy humanity. But he was immediately reminded of his assistant's wish. That was what kept him in control. He wanted to make her dream a reality. No one would be able to maintain their rationality in the face of this eternal cycle of death, life, and destruction. The more he struggled with the suffering, the more the results began to become tangible. Now he was able to possess the strength of a mutant mosquito while maintaining his sanity. A mysterious figure with white hair observes everything that happens. Outside his laboratory, completely bald, the professor left a message on the door. All preparations had been made, and inside was something that would save humanity. It is only a matter of time before the survivors realized that fighting each other leads nowhere. Willing to wait for the arrival of humans, he placed himself inside that little cocoon. All Dr. Kim hopes is that it is not too late. Many years pass, and he was eventually awakened by her dear kisses. Her graphene sword had broken in the fight against the mosquito. It was at that moment that Dr. Kim woke up and struck the creature with one of his hands, revealing that he was completely enraged. After revisiting all his memories, he observes once again the mother of all. Dr. Kim does not understand why she called him father. The mother of all understood that he is unable to remember. Finding a small creature on the ground, she introduced herself to him again. The mother of all is that first mosquito, and she was created by him and Miss Lee, whom she calls mother. Dr. Kim was completely surprised. He began to remember how Miss Lee was very affectionate with that small creature. The mother of all shaped her current appearance to be similar to the offspring generated by Professor Kim and Miss Lee as they had children. But after receiving all that information, the professor is very confused. He wants to know what happened to the planet and all the people. The mother of all informed him that everyone ceased to exist. All that remains now is that vast white expanse where he and she are. Dr. Kim looks around, contemplating the immense void. Wherever he looks, there is absolutely nothing. Desolate, the professor realized that he had failed in his last mission. He runs desperately through that place, remembering the sacrifices of the soldiers who helped him win the last battle. And while running, he also remembered Kiss's desire to go on a picnic. He simply cannot believe that all those people died in vain. Now his assistant's greatest wish was unfulfilled, as she wanted to prevent destruction. Without strength and overwhelmed by sadness, Dr. Kim stopped running, falling to the ground quite desolate. Once again, the mother of all placed herself before him. Dr. Kim does not know why she did all that, being immediately surprised by the mother of all, who told him that this was Miss Lee's true wish. Evidently, in the time they spent together, The small creature absorbed strange ideals. For the mother of all, that is the true peaceful world. After briefly reflecting on these words, Dr. Kim questioned this peace. All he sees is a great absurdity, as the world has been destroyed. That which Miss Lee died to protect no longer exists. After hearing that complaint, the mother of all warned that her father understood absolutely nothing. This is the only possible peaceful world, a perfect world where there is no pain or hatred. Better than anyone, Dr. Kim knows that living beings are driven by the violence that leads to death. To break the cycle, the mother of all gifted existence with that wonderful present, an ideal world where all living beings became one. So you who have come this far must have heard some reference to me on Genesis Evangelion, but yes, this is basically a project of human instrumentalization on a low budget. Obviously, the doctor asked if he is the only remaining life in that place, and the mother of all replied that she became humanity. Now, she is the world itself. After hearing this, Dr. Kim became completely enraged. Taking the mother of all by the neck, he grabbed a stone with his other hand. He was prepared to strike her. Once again, a reference to me on Genesis Evangelion, what madness, man. But deep down, the professor knows that if he strikes her, that will start a cycle of violence once again. And trapped by his own thoughts, he hesitated. Even though he feels a lot of anger towards the mother of all, because she destroyed everything he was trying to protect. That is why she should not try to talk about peace with him, using that filthy mouth. Still with memories of that happy period of his life, the professor realized that this could be the last blood shed in history. People are like children who have been separated from their parents. No one knows exactly where to go or what to do, so they have to learn to deal with all the fear and anxiety they feel about life. Through this, we're going to show mercy. Within that vastness made from the souls of the people who were absorbed by the mother of all, there is someone. Her eyes finally opened and the girl began to hear a voice. Someone is asking her to wake up immediately. Kisses realize is a familiar voice. The same voice she heard that time when she also became the mosquito. It seems that now things will be different. The girl began to look around and came across a large cross made of light. In the middle of it was a person. Kisses immediately approached her. Observing that total stranger, quite excited, Miss Lee said that the two finally managed to meet, but Kisses does not know who she is. Then she said she is an assistant to Professor Kim and that she researched mosquitoes in his company. As they were in a completely strange dimension, Kisses wanted to know if they were dead. Miss Lee informed the girl that their physical bodies no longer exist. However, that does not mean they have departed. In light of the doubts arising in Kisses, Miss Lee prepared her grand explanation, starting at the part about the mosquitoes. They were gathering the genes of all living beings, and Kisses knows this very well. The goal was not just to unite all the genes. The truth is that the queen wanted to unite the souls of all human beings. Those who were devoured by the creatures were absorbed by the queen and now sleep with her. Kisses really found his explanation a great absurdity. Miss Lee said that life is a mass with many pieces of information tied to the physical. The mosquitoes should not possess such abilities to absorb this content, but the genes of human intelligence were absorbed by it. For God's sake, this is a very cheap copy of Evangelion. Pointing outside, Miss Lee asked if Kisses managed to observe what was there. Each of those faces is a soul that is asleep. Kisses remembered that she had seen that before, and this turned into an immediate question, wanting to know why they are awake. Miss Lee said she shares the same genes as the queen and that space belongs to both. Moreover, Kisses did not lose her individuality when she became a mosquito, which is why she can stay awake. It may be that her existence is the last hope for all. Worried, Kisses asked what had happened to the world and to the professor. Miss Lee confirmed to her that the queen managed to achieve her greatest goal. All humanity is gone, except for Professor Kim. After hearing that, Kisses became sad, realizing that they had failed in the last mission. However, Miss Lee made it clear that there is still a possibility. Pointing in another direction, she said that Kisses should look there too. In front of that great horizon, she could see the professor losing control. Having never seen him in his human form, Kisses was confused. The fate of humanity is now in his hands. In summary, it can be said that the mosquitoes are just imitating humans in their emotions. Everything began to change when a particular individual managed to reach the throne. Now the queen, who was the smallest of all, gave humanity one last chance. If it is her will, all those who perish by her hands may return to life, as long as she desires it too. Everything happening outside is just a test to measure the value of humanity and the value of life itself. Living beings who end up accepting destruction and suffering need to learn what the true value of being alive is. Observing everything in that domestic dimension, Kisses began to root for the professor, and he is still deciding what he will do. His eyes are disturbed, and his tears are blood. Quite upset, he remains with a stone in one of his hands. Kisses understood that if he decides to attack the queen, everything will come to an absolute end. From time to time, an opportunity is given to creation to learn to love and forgive. It is through this way that humans can develop empathy and understand the pain of others. Unfortunately, so far, humans have really failed in this mission. After that, blood spread across the floor through the hair of the mother of all. Unfortunately, human beings are unable to overcome their own stupidity. This is the only way to find true world peace. Only love can overcome the laws of destruction that govern this world. But unfortunately, that is not what happened now. The professor really struck the mother of all. Knowing that this happened, Kisses asked Miss Lee what would happen now, and the woman informed that the inevitable fate will finally happen for everyone, the end of the world. Outside, the professor is prostrated and desolate after having destroyed the queen. The entire ground began to crack, a destruction that was spread across the entire planet. Kisses realized that the souls that were asleep are now being sucked away to another place as if there were a bottomless pit in that dimension. Miss Lee observes attentively, and outside, Dr. Kim falls into something. After thinking briefly, Miss Lee realized that Kisses has a great natural talent for survival. Her new mission is to perpetuate her existence. Miss Lee earnestly asked Kisses to take care of the professor and to never forget what she saw in that dimension. After that, everything began to change faster and faster. Kisses understood that message. Once again, Miss Lee is sacrificing herself. She did this because she loved the professor. Amidst those souls, the energy becomes denser and denser until the supposedly spiritual body of Miss Lee was absorbed by the darkness. In that place, she met the mother of all. After welcoming her, she asked why the woman is crying. Finally, within her personal suffering, she managed to find a bit of peace. Outside, the professor wakes up amidst the rubble without any hope. Looking at his blood-stained hand, he began to cry. After everything he experienced in life, he ended up perpetuating this cycle of destruction once again. Miss Lee is trying to console the queen, saying that they will always have the opportunity to try once more. With these words, she hopes to change this creature's way of thinking, and having absorbed so many living beings, she should already know how kind she is capable of being. After receiving the gift of life, Miss Lee decided to share it with the queen as well. From that dimension where the souls were, a great light emerged. All of this was caused by Miss Lee's actions. In an empty space where there was only death and loneliness, love emerged. Finally, the two began to inhabit the same body. Completing what should always have been together, Miss Lee now wanted to continue with her task in the script. After everything that happened, a physical and material body appeared in the real world. It resembles Miss Lee, but at the same time is also the queen. The existence of life is not just a miracle, but also a gift. In that same place is Kisses, who after having lived all that is emotional. Before her is also the professor, who thank God is dressed. The professor, Miss Lee, and Kisses are in this new world, where a small tree sprouts. There will come a day when love and peace will govern the world. I found this allegory of Adam, Eve, and Lilith quite nice. Really, whoever wrote this loves Evangelion. It will take time for humans to learn to forgive and understand one another. Kisses asked the professor to accompany her. Both went near a tree. Little by little, time will heal all wounds. And in a field full of flowers, Miss Lee is blowing dandelion seeds, which are carried by the wind to where the new couple is. Everything in this new world is just them. Quite relieved, Kisses never imagined she would one day relax under the shade of a tree like that. When he savors that apple, the teacher agrees with her. It was then as she realized it was time to cut the teacher's hair again, as it had grown. As soon as the environment on Earth is completely restored, the time will come to awaken the other souls. There will be various calls for reconciliation and forgiveness, just like those of anger. And the more people awaken, the greater the conflicts will be. Perhaps things will return to how they were in the past. But after all the sacrifices that have occurred, they cannot abandon this purpose of trying to do the best that is possible. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.